We'll put it in YouTube, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can also see that here. I think it's the. You don't need to send that, Sean.
Okay. Okay.
So we are live now. That's important to tell me. You don't need to send that. Good. So I think we can open that soon.
Yes, just a second. Let me get the program ready just to. So from the very beginning, they will all have presentations, or
no? The first half an hour not.
Okay, so we don't need to make any of them co-host.
I don't think so. No?
Okay.
Then the second session, you have those presentations, I suppose, no? Which were.
Yeah, some of them I have. Yeah, probably go today in the morning more. So I will. Okay. Okay, so then should I start with the
I think we can.
And then put the trailer now?
Yeah, if you have.
Good, and then you let me know via WhatsApp when. But I think we can start on time because there will be people, no?
Yeah, well, it's a few minutes. We give them more.
Okay, so I will then turn off my camera now. I will try to put a timer in my camera. Well, you will see, so people know. Okay, so I will.
So, a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this Third World Community Power Conference, Women in Community Energy. Before we start, I would like to just give you some technical information. This conference, of course, is a public event, so it's broadcasted live on YouTube. So whatever you say, please be aware that everybody can, in principle, join and listen to you. Then let me also request all the participants to stay muted until it's your turn to speak. We would call those people who are speakers or who raise their hands to speak at that point of time. For questions, please use also the chat window that you can see here so that the moderators and the speakers can read your questions. So with this, I would like to hand over to Monica Oliphant to welcome the participants and to start our conference this morning, this afternoon. Monica. Monica, are you with us?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. And I was expecting to come on a bit later. Sorry. Good. Well, it is certainly a privilege and great honor for me and ISIS to welcome you to the Third World Wind Energy Association Community Power Conference, Women in Community Energy. I'm just moving something. Yeah. The World Wind Energy Association has played a key part over many years in highlighting the important role of community power in the energy transition, both in developed and developing countries. They have drawn attention in several research reports to the unfortunate trend of declining community projects in Europe as feed-in tariffs are replaced by auctions, disadvantaging small community producers that cannot compete with the large commercial ones. They have positioned their conferences in regions where they felt they could provide positive impact in Fukushima and Mali. And WWEA is also the lead chair in the IRENA Coalition for Action Group on Community Power. To add to this, they have now turned their minds to the vexed problem of why there are so few women globally in lead positions in community energy, even though it can be demonstrated that there is no lack of interest or ability. A key research project has just started on identifying the role of women in community power with a focus on Germany, but which includes Japan and Australia as well. Before carrying on with this line of thought, I'd just like to mention that I started my career in renewable energy 40 years ago in wind and finished up more recently in solar. As the International Solar Energy Society representative on the WWEA board, I believe passionately in the importance of wind and solar working closely together, with the correct technology being used where it is most effective, and making them work together in a complementary fashion where possible. I have seen for myself how successful this can be in my state of South Australia, where lately for a few hours on most days, just wind and solar together supply 90 to 100% of electricity generation for part of the day, and at the same time provide completely stable baseload renewable power and falling generation costs. I am glad ISIS works closely with WWEA in promoting our two mainstream renewable technologies. I have great admiration for President of WWEA, Peter Ray, who established the REN Alliance over 12 years ago, principally to encourage renewable energy technologies to work together. Today, we are celebrating the role of women in community power. And looking at the program, I can see a number of names that are well known to me. They are of exceptional women from all over the world, well respected in their various specialities in renewable energy. The energy sector employs millions worldwide, and though numbers vary, women represent only a small percent. Some say 6% of all technical positions, with less than 1% in top management. The representation of women in global wind and solar jobs and in community power is greater than in the energy sector as a whole, but still less than the share across the economy. The WWEA Women in Community Power project will help determine better statistics, and the reliable numbers will be determined if we are to lobby effectively for change. Nevertheless, it's not all bad news, as the very fact that the bias against women is identified as an issue and is starting to be addressed. It is a sign that things are changing, but unfortunately all too slowly. There have been some encouraging signs from Australia that traditionally has a very male-dominated energy-related workforce. Women now hold the very top executive positions in energy policy, regulation, and energy security. And there are a few women also heading large energy retailers. In the field of community energy, C4CE, the Coalition for Community Energy, that Taryn Lane will talk on later, and in their board, women dominate. There is only one man on their board and a woman as a chair. And the same is true in the crowdfunding community group Carina, Citizens Owned Renewable Energy Network Australia. Women in these high positions are recognised as being highly effective and respected in their fields. However, it is the lack of women in the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths related fields that is still a problem and needs increased representation. There are a few good signs in developing countries as well, where training and support for women to deliver clean energy to homes in rural communities is increasing. Anecdotally, women are often thought of as being more reliable and easier to train than men in the maintenance of home renewable energy systems. They are frequently the community motivators as well, if given the opportunity, but are not often given the chance to gain skills for installation jobs. So there are still very many more obstacles to overcome. And in some countries, just providing basic education and empowering women is needed to be addressed. More broadly, we must ensure access to STEM subjects, principles of sustainability and trade skills training for both boys and girls over all aspects of education. I can't wait to hear all the fantastic speakers from around the world talk about their experiences in community power and hear about their recommendations, policy directions, priority areas to work on, and the important role women can and do play in community power for the benefits of all. Welcome to everyone speaking and those listening online, who I hope will actively participate in any Q&A opportunities. If you're able to, Stefan, I did provide a slide to end up with that I would like to present, and that would be great. This is just to promote a conference that the International Solar Energy Society is going to have on the 3rd and 4th of December 2020, and it is the Century of Solar. It is an event that celebrates 50 years of ISIS conferences and looks into the future to predict what the next 50 years may bring. It's a free virtual conference on the 3rd and 4th of December, and it will include a launch of our virtual museum on solar technologies, events and people, and a booklet on solar research pioneers and industries. Thank you. and I look forward to this conference, Women in Community Energy.
Thanks so much, Monica, for a very inspiring speech. I request now the host of the second World Community Power Conference, Ibrahim Togola, if you're there. I've seen that Mali Volkesende is there. Johanna, you're also here. If not, then I would request Marijke van Staden from ICLEI to welcome the participants. Marijke.
There we go. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm very pleased to be here with you today, addressing a really important topic. And it's wonderful to hear Monica also stress that we're not yet at the point of gender equality, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. My name is Marijke van Staden. I work for ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. We're very proud to be a partner of this event. For those of you who do not know ICLEI, it is an NGO, a global network of cities, towns, and regions. We have now more than 2,000 subnational governments in our network, and we're active in more than 100 countries, working on sustainable urban development, which is essentially a foundational theme where we wish to support the local and regional governments to move forward on climate action planning, on circular development, on resilient development, you name it, and we deal with the topic. So very much focus on community, and of course community energy is very close to my heart personally. I lead our climate work globally as the director of the Carbon Climate Center, where we work with our 26 offices around the world. And I'm also the director of business development, proving that women can do two jobs at once. We have a series of activities that we're supporting. I just would like to mention, and we'll deepen that in the panel as well, but we're leading the 100% renewables cities and regions network, which is open to any subnational governments out there. So if your city or your town or region would like to join, please put them in touch with us. We give very practical support and advice to move forward on 100% renewables, and community energy is definitely part of that. Back to you. Thank you very much, Stefan.
Thanks so much, Marijke. Now let me try again. Is Ibrahim here with us? No, we have somebody else from Mali Volkesende. No, then, okay, let's go ahead with Tetsuhida, the host of the first World Community Power Conference. And you notice that we do not always have the topic of women in community energy, but this time we really try to have female panels. But anyway, we also have some male speakers as well, very few.
Okay, thank you, Stefan, and good day, everyone. It's a night in Japan, and the other part is, I guess, it's different. And also very much welcome to everyone, and also very much delight, and also very much the honor to have the third, the World Community Power Conference, and especially the topics is women's in community power. It was 4 years before we hosted jointly with Stefan, WWEA, and the Mali Folk Center, Togo, Ibrahim Togora, to the first World Community Power Conference. And the more and more the importance of the community power or bottom-up energy transitions or energy democracy movement is more and more important. And so especially in the the rise of a democracy, we need more gender and more diversity of the participation of this energy transition. So this event is another very historical importance, I guess. So I will show one pictures. May I? The 4 years before one. Okay, in the meantime, So I'm a representative of our Institute for Sustainable Energy Policies based in Tokyo, Japan, and also Japan Community Power Network. And we are luckily this year we had a new. So this is a kind of memory of the first one. So for board members, 10 board members, just a half, 5 members are women and the other half are men, just equal numbers. And we also elected 2 co-chair persons of the Community Power, Japan Community Power Associations, and the 1 women's later sessions she will come up with, and also there is a man. So very much the luckily we have just a very gender equality the governance right now. So I'm very much looking forward to the discussions, and so all the 5 board members will come up with later sessions. So see you later again. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you, Tetsu. And with this, I would like to invite our colleague from IRENA, Kelly Tai, who is coordinating the Coalition for Action, in particular the Community Energy Working Group. Ibrahim, yes, let's take Kelly and then we take you for the final welcome. Kelly?
Okay, sure. Good day, everyone. Stefan, first of all, thanks for giving me the floor to speak briefly to all of you about IRENA and the Coalition for Action. So my name is Kelly Tai, and I'm an associate program officer with the International Renewable Energy Agency, or IRENA for short. At IRENA, we do believe strongly that women must play an important role in the energy transition. And in this regard, we've been doing a lot of work on gender as well as community energy. So with regards to gender, last year we launched a Women in Wind initiative, as well as a report on women across the wind energy value chain. And that report was launched in January 2020. We are also planning similar efforts in solar energy for next year. On the community energy side, IRENA has looked at the opportunities associated with community participation and ownership of renewables through the IRENA Coalition for Action. So I'll just give a few words about the Coalition for Action. For those of you who aren't aware, the Coalition for Action is a multi-stakeholder platform that was founded by IRENA in 2014 to connect non-governmental actors with our main constituents, who are, of course, our member states. So now we have over 100 members in this coalition, including representatives from the private sector, civil society, and research and academia. So and our members participate in IRENA activities, and they also produce their own outputs, such as white papers and communications campaigns. So we've had a working group focused on community energy now for the past few years. And this year, the Community Energy Working Group has been focusing its efforts on 2 areas. Firstly, we're right now developing case studies on different community energy projects around the world. And through these case studies, we're hoping to explore important dimensions of community energy, such as the role of women. And we expect to be continuing this work next year. Secondly, and I'm very happy to announce this, next month, we're going to be launching a Coalition for Action white paper on financing community energy projects. And I won't say too much about the paper here, but it builds off several case studies to look at basically how policies can be designed to foster community energy and how community energy projects are presently financed. So in support of the launch of this paper, IRENA will also be holding a virtual event under a series of talks that we're holding right now called Policy Talks. There'll be more information posted on this session in the coming days on the IRENA website. But I can tell you right now that it's going to be happening on December 9th. And I would encourage all of you to take a look at the IRENA website and hope to see you in attendance at the session. And for more information, you can go to irena.org for that. So I'll leave it at there. I'm very excited to hear more about today's discussions, and thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Kelly, also for all the great work that you're doing in this field. And then now the last speaker of our opening session would then indeed be not least Ibrahim Tokola. I'm happy to have you here in your capacity as co-host and as the host of the second World Community Power Conference, which took place more or less exactly 2 years ago in Bamako. Ibrahim.
Okay. Good morning, Stefan and your colleagues. So it is really a great honor and to be with you, and then to really congratulate Stefan and World Wind Energy Association and Japanese Institute for Sustainable Energy Policy, Tetsu and his colleagues. It was a great honor for us to really have the conference 2 years ago exactly. And the world changed since with the COVID. And then we are now facing the new situations. And thanks to the human capacity and the technology, we can host this interesting and important event. And I think which is dedicated to women this year, especially when it comes to Africa. Women are playing a really key role on energy access. So we are really, as a Mali Folk Center and as an African organization, very honored and very privileged to be part of this and work with World Wind Energy Associations in Germany, and which is one of the biggest advocates and a great organization lobbying for renewable energy, not only wind, and also the ISEP in Japan, which we've been working together very well and promoting renewable energy also now in Africa, especially agrivoltaics. And I believe that this is going to be a really great event. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you to your colleagues. And on behalf of all Mali Folk Center, we join this and we thank everybody. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to host you here 2 years ago and to be co-host of this great event. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Ibrahim. Now we are, and that's quite rare with our webinars, we are ahead of time. And we can start even 4 minutes ahead of time with our first session. And I'll just hand over then. It's a great pleasure to have Christina Andre here, one of the most active community energy, and I would also say women power in community energy supporters in Germany, originally not from Germany, but I think you can introduce yourself as well. And you will moderate our session, which is about acceptance, legislative restrictions, and female action, ? Now, with this, time for me to be quiet and Christina.
Okay, thank you, Stefan, for the introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As Stefan already said, my name is Christine Andre, and I'm happy to guide you in the next 1 hour through the first session today. How does the well-known research acceptance connect to legislative restrictions and female action? A little bit of my background and the organization where I'm connected to. I'm a board member of the German Citizen Energy Alliance, Bündnis Bürgerenergie, and as a candidate to the European Parliament in the last year's elections and a co-author of the European Green New Deal, I look at the energy transition from a grassroots level, and also from a very strong gender perspective. Our Citizen Energy Alliance represents more than 500,000 energy active citizens in Germany. All our members are engaged as individuals, energy cooperatives, or citizen energy communities, aiming to push and strengthen a bottom-up 100% renewable energy transition by 2030 latest. We advocate a renewable and decentralized energy system, bundle common interests, and advocate on national and EU level. We also pool and network citizen energy enterprise expertise. But please let me now introduce our 3 remarkable guests. Memi Motosu from Nagoya University of Economics in Japan, working in social acceptance research and social survey. And I was happy to see that that Memi, you were also in Friends of the Earth in Berlin office, as far as I know, some time ago. So I'm happy to see that. The second guest of ours is Irma Karakışlak. She's an early stage researcher working in the Mistral project. It's a multi-sectoral approaches to innovative skills training for renewable energy and social acceptance abbreviation at the Institute for Future Energy and Material Flow Systems, ISAS, and a PhD student in sociology at Saarland University in Germany. She is mainly focused on wind energy, like justice perceptions of wind energy projects, but she will tell more about herself. And our last guest, but not least, is Dr. Dörte Fouquet, a partner at one of the leading law firms for the energy and infrastructure industry, Becker Büttner Held, and is head of the Brussels office in Belgium. She specialized in EU law and international legal relations with a focus on competitions, infrastructure, energy, and environment. She's a legal advisor to companies, finance institutions, associations, and governmental agencies in Germany and other EU member states and EU institutions on international level. And she's also a member of Eurosolar, where I am also a member of, and I'm happy to see that. But exactly what to expect in the next 1 hour. In the first part, we will see 3 presentations, and in the second part, there will be a discussion round, and there will be a possibility for Q&A in that section. But before we continue, because acceptance is also a very psychological and personal perspective, I would, before any of our 3 guests starts its presentation or introduction, I would first like to ask a personal question, 3 of you. If you look back in time, how did it happen you started dealing with renewable energy? Was it a coincidence, or it was rather like a mission from the beginning on, or something rather in between? And if it was a mission, I would be very interested in your internal motivation. So please, I give the stage. Maybe we start in the same. Maybe we start with Memi Motosu, and then Irma Karakışlak, and then Dr. Dörte Fouquet.
Hello, everyone. My name is Memi Motosu. I'm very happy to be here. Your question was, I was just wondering, I was in Germany at that time, so it's about 15 years ago. I was in Berlin, and I was wondering why there are so many wind turbines in Germany, but not in Japan. And that is my what I wanted to know at that time. And then I started to research what the difference. That's the point.
So it means that the Energiewende, that's the German energy transition, actually took you forever?
So many people say the difference is economical aspect. But I thought it's not only the economical aspect or engineering aspect. And I thought it might be kind of psychological thing or social aspect. So that's why I started this research.
That's interesting. I will tell to Friends of the Earth colleagues when I meet them, so they know what their impact is. Thank you very much. Irma Karakışlak, if I pronounce your name well.
Hello, it's quite well, actually, especially my last name, which is quite hard. Yeah, thank you for your question. And I would also like to point out that I am sharing my session with my colleague Sofia Kupets. So she's also here. And I'd just like to mention that we're going to share the session and present our part together. To answer your question, I'm very, very early in the whole energy research arena. And I'm originally from Istanbul, Turkey. And what I've observed in my undergrad and my master's studies in the whole energy sector in Turkey, unfortunately, the social issues, social sides are not very much researched, or the social acceptance concept, even though in practical terms it's a big issue. There has been so many lawsuits, so many social movements against a lot of infrastructure. Unfortunately, in the research arena, it's still a lack of, there's a lack of focus in that. That's one of the main reasons that I was interested. It was looking, why does not Turkey look into this more? So that's why I'm also including, even though I'm based in Germany, I'm also including Turkey into my research. Yeah.
So you are bridging.
Yeah, exactly, hopefully.
Very important. I find it's Istanbul also has many bridges connecting two important regions, and actually you are then bridge for the wind energy and acceptance. Okay. Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. If I may ask Dr. Fouquet to join.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much also for your really lovely and careful, if I may say, introduction into our platform for this small hour. Very well appreciated. So I'm probably the elder here. And my reason to go the way of energy system change was in 1986. I was at that time a young civil servant in the land and city of Hamburg. And Chernobyl happened just when I entered the public service. And I was first in the administration of energy and environment in the city of Hamburg, and working in interesting positions, fortunately for women at that time. And in a way, this was my leitmotif over decades of work to say we can no longer afford to have only the legal and the societal ground for centralized power production from very unhealthy and unsecure sources. So that's why my whole pathway was focused on giving advice on energy system change, and especially then obviously renewable energy were always up front, and also I hope also in parallel to my work as a lawyer, and I come to my work for ERA, for the European Renewables, also in educating young colleagues, men and women, on that pathway. Thank you.
Oh, that's very exciting. And did you know at those times, because for instance photovoltaics wasn't yet, so I'm so sorry, I have
maybe I can you probably want to say what was my expectation on renewables at that time. Well, that's a very good question, because you may know we had at that time the first step into wind energy technology in Germany, and it was dressed to kill in a way. They overdimensioned at that time the first turbine, which I think was erected and fell down with the next storm quite drastically, and had swallowed up millions of research funds. So in the 80s, in the end of the 80s, it was more efficiency, it was more better technologies for combined heat and power on gas and on coal and so forth. But then I would say in the early 90s, photovoltaics, the first, then came the white paper for energy, for renewable energy from the European Commission, from Wolfgang Pals. And so there was a dynamic which was kicked off, let's say, in the late 80s, absolutely.
I see. So you are actually, if I can put it that way, actually you are happy about the opportunities, technical opportunities for renewable energy development because it's going decentralized. It's no way to turn that back. So is it what was your wishful thinking at that time?
Yeah, it was. Even though very early also I would have accepted or accept that I created once this nonsense sense, maybe big and small, we need them all. So for 100% solution, you will also have big offshore, etc. Only what I'm always fearing is whenever something bigger is discussed, and that's a male problem in our society, everybody in policy rushes towards that. Like we have now, we do now hydrogen, big hydrogen strategy, and not questioning what's the basis of that strategy. What's the input? Is the input nuclear? Hello? And but there is this testosterone-minded view that, oh, wow, big is beautiful. So I'm not in favor of that. I just say democracy and energy transformation is a purely democratic process and should be as democratic and decentralized as possible. And you add on what you need in order to feed the mass needs. That's for sure. I'm not. We cannot do all with citizens projects, but without citizen project, you cannot change the energy system.
I see. It's really as you described. I'm happy that you described it so precise. This difference between men's and women's approach. I don't want to discriminate anyone, but I see that we women often have a kind of more difficult path to succeed and to work towards our goals or to arrange some kind of harmony and where things work together. And this is the mindset what you just described now. Actually, let's start with even small things like, starting from to offshore, and we use everything where it makes sense and is decent and functioning. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, I give back the stage then to our first speaker, because we lost a little bit of time, but it was very important for me to have this insight into your private lives and private motivations, because this is always the strongest driving force. And it stays forever. That's nothing what comes and goes, but it's just there, and all of us, we can build upon and build on this good base. So Memi Motosu, I give you the stage for the next minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I set my PowerPoint on. Just a moment, please. Can you see this? Okay.
Yes.
Excuse me. I have to my video off, so my PC is so slow.
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay, again, my name is Memi Motosu. I'm going to speak how do women perceive wind projects in Japan. I'd like to introduce myself just a little bit. I am working at Nagoya University of Economics in Japan, and I am researching acceptance of wind energy projects. And normally I focus on wind farms that private company owned. So this is first time for me to make a presentation on community power and the participation of women. And I'd like to fly overview what I'm going to speak today. First of all, I'm going to give a quick overview of my research. Then I am going to explain my first community wind survey, focusing on gender differences. And finally, I'm going to talk about the current situation of women's participation in Japan. One of the main topics of my research is to analyze why people oppose or accept wind projects. I'm always asking this question: do you approve or disapprove the local wind farm before the construction, present, and in the future? The result was there was little difference between before the construction and present. But when asked whether they approve or disapprove if a new wind project is planned, the opinion of disapproval was increased, so 42 points shifted to negative. I think this is disappointing data for wind projects. The present, they are showing positive attitudes, but more than half of them don't want to have wind projects anymore in their community. So I analyzed statistically why these opinions were changed and found some factors influence on acceptance. Affecting factors and acceptance are these four. I show here a part of the relevant factors. And noise annoyance is a factor of wind turbine itself, but other three factors are about planning process. So I mean, there is cases where wind turbine is not a cause. And on the other hand, non-relevant or less relevant factors are these, for example. So acceptance can be changed not only by wind turbine itself, but also how wind developer act or design the process. So I put two pictures here, and many people in Japan tend to say wind turbine is bad or wind turbine is evil. But based on the research data, actually wind turbine itself is not so bad. The planning process is more important factor to influence acceptance. And perhaps there might be gender differences how perceive the planning process and wind projects. So I checked if there are any differences between men and women. I conducted an internet survey on March 2nd in this year, and I got 343 samples data. And there is a 2 megawatt wind turbine, and public involvement was the citizen in the located city, Yokohama, can participate in this community wind projects by publicly offered bonds. And this community wind is called Hama Wing and located in Yokohama. There is no houses very close to the turbine, and there were warehouses and ports where cargo located. The distance from Hama Wing to the downtown resident area is about 1 kilometer. This table shows the demographic data of this survey. The ratio of women was smaller than men, around 30%. The most respondent generations for both gender were 40s and 50s. And next, I want to show how many samples participated in this community wind. So it was quite few. 3 women and 7 men. So both are less than 1% of the total. So they are a small number. And I asked experience of work or study about wind power. The number of respondents was increased compared to the participation, but it's still small. It is still quite small number. When combined the past and the present, the female was 5% and male was 9%. Now I asked this question also in the survey. This time I put an intermediate answer, neither. The result was the majority choose neither. But you can see the tendency, disapproval to the new is increasing and approval is decreasing. This tendency is almost same with the result I showed previously. Regarding gender difference, it seems like the percentage of men of approval is a little higher than women. Next slide is about health effect. In Japan, health effect due to noise and low frequency noise is one of famous problems. So I asked whether they have health effects. As a result, quite few people are aware of health effect. 3 female and 1 male. And in this question, I found no particular gender differences either. And I asked also how the development of wind power in Japan should be with 4 choices. The answer of prohibited is a small percentage in both gender. There is no difference. But in the answer of encouraged and promoted, around 9 points was higher in the men's opinion than women's opinion. And the percentage of women did not know was about 10 points higher than men. So I need to analyze statistically more, but I see some gender differences in this question. The last question until today is about effectiveness to reduce climate change by wind power. The percentage of yes was higher than no in both women and men. The percentage of yes was higher than no in both women and men. But one difference is most women answered don't know, around 57%, while most men answered yes, it was almost 50%. The choosing don't know intermediate answer is typical tendency of Japanese people. But considering this tendency and the previous result of approval and disapproval, this result, so I got an impression women are more likely to be undecided about wind power. So from this data, I see quite few difference between men and women. The only things I can say is it seems men have a little more positive view for wind projects and women are undecided. And regarding participation, quite few samples participated in this case. So I cannot say much about women's participation from this data, but I'm sure women can play an active role, especially in communication part. So I would like to add the next slides. What I would like to emphasize is importance of women's participation in discussion tables. In Japan, when building an offshore wind turbine in a general sea area, it is necessary to be allocated as a promotion area for offshore wind. And in this allocation process, council is set up in each area. And I show here the gender ratio of each council. So you can see there are very few women. So, but this small ratio is not only the case of wind power. So I can see this situation all over Japan. So I believe women can advance more in the communication field, and it is necessary. Also, I want to add one more point. There are more women leaders in community power. Most of the directors are men in Japan, but in Japan Community Power Association, half of the directors are women. Compared to Japanese Wind Energy Association, JWEA, there is no woman. So, you know, this number is amazing, 5 women in community power. So it's amazing data. But JWEA is trying to improve to promote women participation and has launched a working group in this August to promote women's participation. So this situation will be changed, but the problem is too few female members in JWEA. So first step would be to get women interested in wind power sector. So later on this symposium, Japanese women working with community power are scheduled to talk. So I hope many of you can get some interesting information from Japanese women readers. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mami. It's very impressive. Thinking about how much, how heavily are Japanese women how much is their burden of unpaid care work regarding family members, children, or elderly, or if it's usual that women do these jobs unpaid at home and they have many other worries and eventually also weaker financial background because of that. Do you think that it has any impact on the results?
You mean no paid work, housework, you mean?
Yes, housework, taking care of children, taking care of elderly. Is that usually a women's job in Japan? Or
yeah, I would say yes, more than Germany, I guess. But recently, women is promoting in working, so the situation is slowly changed.
Okay, because I used to be in Osaka on the university for some short time, and I noticed that already there, and I was wondering if this is changing. Do you also think that membership maybe in the Wind Association is also depending on financial lack of financial sources for women? So should there be, just to put it plain, should there be a 50% like off for women who join the association?
It's my opinion. So I guess it's based on women's interesting.
It's a lack of interest.
Yes, in the engineering department in Japanese university, there are many men. So that most of students are men. And such men students get the job in wind field or power generation sector.
I see. So that's the route, most probably.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it is also necessary to remove the image that the wind power is in the field of engineering. So such image separate women from wind sector. So I think we should change such engineering image from wind power.
I see. You mean it's no rocket science and the base is a participation in it. Thank you very much. That was very exciting. Let's have a look to Europe. I would then give Irma Karakeslak and her colleague the scene.
Yes, hello. Hello again. I would start sharing my presentation and Sophia will take on the lead of our talk now.
Thank you, Sophia.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Hi from Lisbon, Portugal. Nice to meet everyone. Yeah, so as my colleague already said, we're really delighted to be here today, and the short presentation that we've prepared for you is really based on some of the discussions that we've had in the context of a research program in which both of us are currently doing our PhD studies. So a short presentation of that program. Mistral is an international training network that is funded by the European Union's Horizon 2020 program and the Marie Curie Sklodowska Grant Agreement. And we are 15 young or early stage researchers in 8 beneficiary institutions that are currently trying to get a better understanding of the social dimensions of renewable energy technologies. And we are especially interested in social acceptance processes of wind energy projects. Could you turn to the next slide, Irmak? Thank you. So the aim of this research program is really to promote interdisciplinarity in this field and to link the socio-political, the market and the community dimensions that have already been highlighted by Wüstenhagen and colleagues in 2007, so quite a while ago. And we're also aiming to really engage key stakeholders beyond academia in our work and to have an innovative training environment. So yeah, we're delighted to be part of this conference, and we're looking forward to discussing what using a gender lens for community wind energy and also for a program like Mistral could look like in practice. Please, the next slide, Irmak. Thank you. So yeah, both Irmak and I are working on very specific projects that look into social acceptance. Irmak is interested in social norms and how those may shape the social acceptance processes of wind energy in different cultural environments. And I myself am looking into how the collective memories of past energy projects can make people feel about wind energy today. And so gender as a culturally and historically grown concept is really somewhat present in both our projects already, even though it's not very explicit yet. So in an initial literature review, we went back to some central theoretical contributions, as you can see here, such as the idea that gender is a social construct and that gender also intersects with other categories of social analysis. And in addition, we found that despite gender being somewhat omnipresent in social science energy studies, with some very interesting examples in research, for instance, on climate change, energy transitions, or even in the energy poverty literature, there is still a lot to be done. And especially in social acceptance research on renewable energies, gender is barely treated as more than a socio-demographic variable, unfortunately. And despite a few contributions that already take gender dimensions into account more explicitly, in-depth and also critically informed empirical studies or even theoretical examinations of gender and social acceptance of wind energy specifically are still missing. So I'm handing over to Irmak.
Thank you so much. And yeah, taking on from where Sophia left off, exactly for this reason, we've been trying to understand or trying to highlight the significance of focusing on the gender factor to investigate critically whether it allows visibility, power, and voice to all members of the community that been researched, and it's in some cases it can make some gender can show significant results or not, but it is important to allow this inclusion of all the members. So in order to question these and the following issues, I've been conducting some semi-structured expert interviews, up to 7 right now, and researchers working in the social acceptance of renewable energy technologies, senior researchers in the field. And in these interviews, I asked the participants about their interpretation of the gender ratio in the acceptance research, and to what extent it allows visibility to all the members of the community. And I would like to present some points as preliminary results. So we had this idea to present it as in the social acceptance triangle, as some of you might have been already familiar with, which is 3 clusters of focusing on community acceptance, social political acceptance, and market acceptance. And so the perception of share in the workforce in the renewable energy and wind sector is mainly still male dominated, even though it has been changing over the past years. The difference between men and women's position in the market is still apparent as we know it. And one of the topics highlighted was that men are running the developer corporations in the leading positions, whereas women are more leading in the environmental departments, permit managers, or community officers, or in community engagement positions in some countries. So the perception, and it is the experience of these experts, that men are in managing positions and women are more closely related to environmental and social science and the topics surrounding these fields. So also masculinity and also machoism were mentioned related to market in an industry of wind, as some of the features that they have observed. So if we look into more the opposition or supporting groups of wind, the faces of opposition groups seem to point out more men than women, although all the experts have observed some opposition groups with a woman leader. One interesting and kind of conflicting example is that when that a woman as the face of an opposition group is only the face, but the clear majority of this group is also still men. Maybe it's more of a representation theory of such a group, but of course there could be many assumptions. There could be many other reasons. This was one assumption. So the statement overall that says that more men over women is not something that I can support right now due to the lack of evidence, because as we said, there has not been much research done in this field. But overall, the following topics and factors were mentioned. So the tendency to care for the future was an argument that was highlighted more with women, which aligns with the literature and studies over the motivation for women's participation in environmental justice movements. Following this, women's tendency for sustainable development was highlighted, although another risk was that the risk perceptions of such energy infrastructures could be more of an acceptance factor for women, connected to concerns for future generations. Another point was that in some cases and some countries, women are historically excluded from knowledge and access to knowledge, which creates the perception of women would less know about energy issues than male peers, no matter whether this is the case or not. One point that was interesting to hear was that it kind of conflicts also with this, that men tends to simplify and speed up the process without going through all the details of the development, which appears to create conflict in some cases. Also, the expert mentioned that in small rural places, it's harder to even access some people in the communities, mainly women. So, because in heterosexual relationships, women still could be domesticated, whereas men are representing them in the public sphere. So, which is also interesting because women are more directly affected by the energy usage and production. Sorry. So differences in technology adoption was highlighted in relation to wind also, meaning the studies on prior studies on electrical vehicles and solar panels and their relation to gender roles, masculinity or femininity could also present some indicators in the case for wind for future research. And there are some cases mentioned that women have more social capital, which leads to women being more outspoken about energy-related issues in some cases. Therefore, this really differs between cultures and the understanding of gender roles and what they indicate. One recommendation was to investigate the political power of both sexes in the public meetings and hearings, which could tell a lot about how comfortable women are by expressing their thoughts and concerns about wind projects in such cases. The mentioned topics are just perceptions and impressions of a very diverse group of experts, some coming from different disciplines, backgrounds, and based in different countries, some from Western Europe, some from the United States, and some from Asia. So therefore, all the experts highlighted the lack of research looking into gender as a socially and culturally constructed relation within the community. Also, this is like the most important preliminary result that I would like to present and underline. So moving forward, as future research, one point is to examine if and how women get differently involved in issues of social acceptance of wind energy, the assumptions of gender roles and their representation in the public and private spheres, which could lead to a deeper understanding of whether gender norms have an effect in the public responses. Another perspective is to look into who are running these communities, who are running these towns. And there was also one recommendation to look into climate perceptions, whether there's a difference between men and women and how they perceive climate change and risk perceptions. This could lead to acceptability as an acceptability factor because it directly connects with the energy transition issues. So I will let it on to again, Sophia, to close up.
Yeah, thank you, Irmak. So some things that we've discussed and that we think are important also for the research perspective on these issues are that gender really should be looked at not only as gender, but as something entangled with other factors, other social dimensions, and how they are embedded in cultural and historical context. And in addition, we also think that it is worthwhile asking the question why, at least in most socio-geographical contexts, we are still talking about gender as a binary concept when in some parts of the world, people have already moved on beyond this binary distinction. And so finally, as our colleagues in the Mistral program are starting their fieldwork now, we're still in the early days, let's say, of the program, we would like to further think about how to use a more explicit gender lens for our work, for our program. And so we would like to ask what are possible ways of using a gender lens in a research project like ours on the social acceptance of wind energy that is not primarily focused on gender as such yet, maybe. And with these thoughts, yeah, we would like to thank you for your kind attention, and we're looking forward to any comments or questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sophia and Irma. Maybe because of short lack of time, I would like directly now to pass it over to Dr. Dörte Fouquet, and then we will have a question and answer session.
Yeah. Okay. I think, hello again. When I prepared a little bit for this meeting, I didn't do a PowerPoint, and I think also for the sake of time, but also for the context, I was looking into it when Stefan asked me if I could participate. It's not so necessary. When I prepared, I thought about as a lawyer, law should be agnostic when it comes to gender, but that's still in many countries and in many parts of our legal world a little bit of a dream, meaning it might be in the text of the law, but the application of the law is always then the other matter. I wanted to start a little bit looking into the historic context, a little bit like our colleagues have done that before, and I mean the historic context of the right of women in our societies. And for me, one of the litmus test of an active participatory right, a basic right, is to have the universal suffrage. And the universal suffrage is, in historic terms, still, when we say in history 100 years is a short time, it's still a fairly young concept in our societies. It has been different. I was studying actually history of law when I was young. Environment and energy was still to be nice in administrative law. Anyhow, in history, when you look, when we got the right to vote, the general suffrage, it's in Europe, it's fairly late. Australia, and I want to turn back to Monica and her wonderful introductory speech, they were earlier than we were. Even South Australia already in the 19th century. In Europe, it was most of the countries, the first wave was only at the end and after the First World War, and then after the Second World War. And I looked it up, Portugal, only after finishing dictatorship in 1974, women could vote. So we should bear that in mind. So we came a long way. On the other hand, when you look in the, it was already Mimi said that, and you mentioned it, Christina, the role of women, it has changed, but it is also historically, it's a fairly short time, and we have had to fight a lot. It's probably started with the suffragette and others before. I remember in socialist terms, the workers' unions and they recognized that there was a mismatch with women and equality towards men, but they saw that as a side issue. The main issue was equal right for the workers. So again, we always had to step back, sometimes pragmatically and sometimes out of force. Then what I also find interesting, when you look into our civil laws, and you can look into that, is in France, the same as it has been in Germany, 19th century. On one hand, they modernize it in economic terms so that the Bürgertum, the citizens versus feudal structures had an established role and were the backbone of economy and mercantilism and so forth. But for example, the German Civil Code from 1896 until 1957 had a wording in one article: the man is the sole decision takers in all aspects of matrimonial life, especially also considering where to live and in what type of housing. And only in 1957 came a phrase which I learned when I entered studies, because there then we had in the 70s a new reform in Germany. In 1957, this was reformed in saying the woman has the right to have a job, but only as long as it does not collide with its duty in the marriage and in the family. And that could be decided by a judge or first by the husband, and the woman had to fight against the husband before a civil court only assembled by men to get this right. So I only want to say that our corsage, our frame is still very much defined, at least has been still by our duties for family and for the husband in the past. So that has changed. So it's a relief to see our young researchers. They can look very differently on gender issues, which is good. Coming to the energy world, I think I can only also say the associations for energy, which have not, for renewable energy, which do not have a strong chapter on community power will always lack equality of women, or it is always a very artificial quota setting. And why is that so? If I would look in due respect to the big industry associations like Wind Europe or so, they have not the one man, one vote or one woman, one vote principle. Some votes count more than other votes. And that is the industry votes. And then we come also of that setting of engineering and of education and mathematics, engineering and social and natural sciences. There in Europe, it's getting better, but I have here a statistic, a fairly young one. It's still, let's say, if the ratio from 1 to 10 in engineering, 2.4 women and 5.1 would be the factor of men in Germany, for example. And on average in the European Union, it's 2.8 to 4.1. So you have two things here. You have a very capitalistic, non-participatory structure of industry associations. One can say if they are for wind or if they are for coal. It's not a big difference. And on top, you have this fodder coming in from engineering, which is normal. So we have to do a lot to bring more women into engineering studies and beyond, also in the jobs. Whereas associations like who have citizens first approaches, it's normal that you have almost as much women as, and you saw it in Japan, as men. Also, where did they come from? Often from grassroots movements against the coal power plant. And then they say, what do we next? We do renewables. So it's normal. It's a natural extension. I buy my bread, I buy clean energy, I produce my bread, I produce clean energy. That's the 1 + 1 = 2 in all these things. And that's therefore, I think the many barriers are inherent. They are not only because we do renewable energies. That's what I wanted to say before. It's education, it's access to information. Already how we can now use as tool, you showed the little panel. It's demystified. You are demystifying a complicated thing, so to say, by just touching it. But when you look, sometimes you want to install, I want to do it now here at the Danish border on our ground, some more renewable. When you look into the application and the manuals for that, the manuals are not written for us. I mean, women are intelligent, but they're just written maybe they are translated into 50 different languages. I just don't get it. And I don't think I'm too dummy. So there's also a thing of how to translate our tools, this wonderful simplified tools now, into usability for all of us, so that it's also an issue we should take care of. But to conclude, some of our fights, I would say, are typical societal inherent, and if I may, outdated capitalistic forms of associative work. Versus we have a wealth, and I think this association who is inviting us today has a big opportunity to continue this one person, one vote approach, and with that one changes a lot of things. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think listening to you, I am very optimistic now about the perspectives of civil involvement in. We do lots of, our members are very much involved in photovoltaics a lot. I see that as the first step, the first entry into the energy world. And there are also the plug and play modules, which are wonderful, connected with anything electric, what you have in the house. And but it was also very sad to see this short history span of European women. I come from a war-torn Yugoslavia. I was a refugee, and then I landed 8 years ago in Germany, and I can see that even within Europe there are huge differences. I really had I have to say that landing in Bavaria 8 years ago, and even coming from Budapest, from a not particularly progressive country, but I was better off as a mother, as a woman there. And this is a shocking fact. I see all this wealth in Bavaria, and there is nobody thinks of our interests. All the other mothers are pretty lost here, I have to say. So therefore, I was also running for elections because I saw nobody is really. I mean, this have to be addressed. But there is also one thing what really, and I put all these questions all the time when I see this acceptance, focusing and acceptance of wind energy or renewable energy at all. Was there any acceptance studies, investments into research projects regarding nuclear waste or energy policy laws?
Yes, there are, and that is also due to the fact that we, especially in Germany, we had these manifest open air eternal discussions like Brockdorf, and in special places where there were the first ideas for final storage of nuclear waste. No, there is a lot. What I think would be also good, and I think also our young colleagues have just shown it. We should have some better data pools where this research is accessible. So you have research here and there and anywhere. There's more. When I looked into it, the first gender study, for example, in Citizen, so go back to the early to 2003 and even before that, it just, yes, they are published, and then we seem not to use them well enough, or we are so pragmatic that we know where everything goes wrong. So yes, there is a data pool issue which we could address, which could be done better. I even think now with, for example, with ICLAI or with the other associations for citizens, Molly, for example, you could say that we already have gathered. We gather so much practical examples and good examples. But how to distribute them, that we do not always, with each research, reinvent the wheel, is an interesting topic where I don't have the best answer. But with intelligent communication, we should be able to.
I studied communication, so
voilà.
It landed now on my desk, and I'm going to look into it. And try to see possible places where it could grow. Maybe all of the panelists could maybe switch on the cameras, so we enter the question and answer part. Maybe I will need some help because I wasn't reading the questions. Maybe Stefan, could you see if there are any questions coming in? The list is very long here.
Yeah, this is more comments, I think. Maybe we can ask the people now to raise their hand if somebody would like to, from the audience, would like to make a panel. So you go to the chat and then raise, or just type briefly again in the chat.
Okay, so
Anna Krenz has a question.
Anna Krenz.
Hello, and maybe it's hello everybody. I'm so excited to listen to you. It's so amazing. Finally, it's our voice, the women's voice, which was so missing in the renewable world. Usually, well, as you have your own experiences, it is usually men who go to conferences and take the voice, but it's time for us, for women of different age, different nationality, and different background. And thank you for what you are all doing, and especially Dorte Fouquet. I was just now almost getting crazy. I don't have a question, but but I just have a wish that there will be more women in renewable energy, and especially also on higher places, because if you look around, it seems that women as we are the keepers of the home, we are also the keepers of communities. This is usually our responsibility, and women do it well, and they do it since centuries. And well, that's how it is. But times have changed. We all have to work as well and do many other things, because it is so. It just being a housewife is fine, but it's usually not enough, because one person cannot really earn for the household, and we are emancipated. We want to study, we want to do our things and mission and this and that and work. So I hope there will be more women on leading positions, especially. Let's just try to catch up with the centuries of what we have missed, and we were not existing, we were forgotten and sitting in the kitchen cooking. Yeah, let's try to support each other in international networks and support also our colleagues. It's not a question to all of you. I'm just saying this because I think it's important that if we have female colleagues in our work or wherever, just to support them, the younger ones, the older ones, so that the connection, that our solidarity thing grows vertically and horizontally. We need more women. And we need more solidarity beyond borders. And also, I think what's important in renewable energy as well, not only the business part, but you see, you were talking about inequalities and gender problems and pay gaps and all this. There are women fighting for their rights now, as we speak, in many, many countries. They go on the streets, they risk corona, they really fight for their rights, human rights, different issues in different countries. But it means that there's still something wrong. A lot of things are wrong, not only in Europe, that too, but in the world, in countries like ex-Yugoslavia or Poland, where I come from. I'm just looking what is happening now. It's we need also, I think it's my opinion, that we need more intersectional. It's a feminist activist word, intersectionalism, I know, but maybe this is what we need, our road towards equality and the proper role of a woman in renewable energy and in other situations. It's all interconnected. Yes. So let's fight for women's rights and let's fight for renewable energy on many, many levels. And it is called intersectional, but let's make it intersectional, and let's just, with our decentralized female approach, let's just do it.
Thank you, Anna. Actually, I followed your work for quite some time, and I'm happy that you spoke up, because it's also very important to see kind of the private background of yours. So I'm now very, now I know, now I know the fights you fight. Thank you for this insight. She's very active, Anna Krenz is very active in renewable energy in Poland, just for those who don't know. Thank you. I've also read something from Molly Wash. Could I maybe ask you to just give your input, Molly? Okay, she's maybe...
Yeah. No, I'm here. Yeah. No, I mean, I just wanted to. I was.
The sound is.
Thanking Dirta for always being so. Sometimes that you.
Sorry to cut you. Could you please repeat the sentence, because we couldn't hear you on the beginning? Technically.
Do you hear me now?
Yes. No. Yes.
Yeah. No, I was saying that, you know, sometimes they say you can't be what you don't see, and in the Brussels policy
Okay, maybe we switch off the cameras so that Molly can. Molly, we cannot. Molly, can you switch off?
Really respected, inspiring women. There's far too many men
Molly?
who are put up on.
Oh yes, excellent. Let's give it a try now, because your internet doesn't work. Can you please start again?
Yeah, sure. now I have to put Dirta in an embarrassing situation so many times. Just wanted to say that it's always inspiring when women who have so much expertise and respect also empower and encourage other women. The Brussels policy landscape can sometimes be a very male environment where people who talk too much and are full of waffle get much more respect. But so I think it's really important what people have said a few times, encouraging younger colleagues and yeah, supporting them and building them up. And if I would have a question, it would be, Dirta, what was the kind of most ridiculous or most sexist thing you saw in all your years? I can only imagine being a young lawyer, you must have heard and seen some ridiculous comments through the 80s, 90s.
There were so many. Well, maybe one thing, Molly, when one was at the conference and in renewable energies or in energy and in general, and one was so alone in a way, in maybe 10 women from 120 men. And when I really had to laugh was always when there was a break and the men were rushing to their bathroom and we had all the space in our bathroom. But I thought that's not the achievement we need, really. But yes, you have this, I cannot pinpoint, well, some things are meant nicely and then they are belittling anyhow. I will never forget one appearance at the European Court of Justice, where my colleague from the legal service of the European Commission came, and I knew him, and we had fought before. It was again about access for renewables to the market, etc. And then this nice gentleman came towards me, and we have to wear our toque, our robe, our professional thing, and he had his on the commission, I had mine on. And then he came, and I said, wait a minute, does he want to kiss me now? It's a bit not appropriate before the court here. And then no, he wanted to correct the setting of my scarf. And I thought, give it a break. But this is the best thing. What I also think, what we should sometimes just take them as a joke, and then many things are much more easy. Just oneself, one shouldn't take always too seriously, but yeah, they come from their background and many, and they're so wonderful. Also, it's always nice to see when they develop. For example, also in the world of renewables, and I have a very good friend from Sweden who studied engineering, and his dream was to become a director of a Swedish nuclear power plant. And then he started thinking, and he then in the 70s published the first little leaflet on solar Sweden. And since then he completely changed. And these are those, I do not want to, I rather like people when they develop, and when we also say, oh, there I made a mistake. And yes, and I changed, because when people are born and know it all, always, being it woman or man, it's so boring.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, Antonia Proca von Rescope, that's a renewable energy citizen cooperatives network, has a question. Dear Antonia, nice to see you here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this wonderful conference so far. I'm really happy to be joining you. I will be presenting in the afternoon session. I wanted to raise the following question to our panelists in this morning's session, morning in Europe over here. I was interested to hear from our speakers their perspective on the concept of feminist men, or let's say gender-aware men. How much do we actually need them? Because at least my experience is that sometimes having a man really like speaking up for the woman who is to present after him, for instance, can have a dubious effect. Sometimes it works really well, really like we feel empowered, but sometimes it's a bit difficult, let's say, to see whether this actually has an empowering effect or it's almost patronizing in a kind of a positive, I don't know how to describe it. And I wanted to hear from the speakers, because obviously if we are to really empower women, we need to also have some, I don't know how to say, some coalition, let's say, with the really like progressive and really advanced people of all genders, maybe. And I wanted to hear their experience and their perspective on this. Thank you very much. I hope my question's last point is clear.
For me, it was clear. Maybe the other panelists could also switch on their videos. We'll try if the internet is gonna carry it. And who would like to answer this question? I mean, Dörte, already you mentioned the the rope situation. It reminded me a little bit on that with a good intention. But Antonia, I think you really had a question where there is a big silence.
I just think our young colleagues should answer first.
The same thought I had. So maybe, thank you.
I could say something, Antonia. I think it's a really relevant question, and it's kind of always been out there. And in my generation of like early stage researchers, I would say I just meet a lot of men who are feminists or who claim to be feminists at least, and I don't really know to what extent they are or what that actually means, because obviously there are also many different types of feminism, right? But yeah, so in that generation, I don't really see anybody who would say anything different. Then older people that I've been working with might be a little bit different, but they maybe also come from a different background of experience. So yeah, I don't know, maybe somebody who has a little bit more experience could say something on how they have seen it developing throughout the years.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sophia. I would also in the same time like to thank you because we ran out of time and we are 10 minutes too late. And I would like to pass it over to Stefan to continue. And thanks so much for this wonderful panel.
Thank you, Christina. Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
everybody. Great.
Thanks so much for such a wonderful panel. Allow me just two remarks. One is you addressed the associations, and I know that I'm one of those people. We are not a good example yet. And of course, this is even the condensed version, because as a World Association, when we have elections, it's the national associations which nominate the board members. And then you know what you get is that in all those countries, you have the male leaders, and then they are, so it's even more challenging. Although, of course, we are working a lot on the decentralized level. So please, all of you, you're so fantastic. Please get involved and in that area. And we'd be more than happy to have also women who are also maybe competing for that. And the second, just listening to you, and I think the last question, one personal experience I'm just facing, because I have two boys, 5 and 7 years old. And what I see how they, not at home, we try to not educate them that they're boys, they must be strong and not cry, etc. But just one short story was when one of the boys had a little bit pink t-shirt, and somebody said, "Oh, you look like a girl." So I think we really have to, that's worse than it was 40 years ago when I was a child. There's so much that still needs to be done. But anyway, I don't want to take too much attention now from the next panel, and I'm very, very proud that we have an excellent panel now. Let me again say thank you to this very inspiring panel, and thanks a lot, Christina, for moderating in a very inspiring way also. Now the next panel is about women in renewable energy, community energy, and climate. And I'm really very proud we have 5 leaders in both areas. We have Taryn Lane here from Australia. She's one of the leaders of the community energy movement in Australia. We have Janine O'Keefe, one of the climate movement leaders. Janine, you're one of those people who invented the For Fridays movement. Very proud to have you here. We have Marijke van Staden. You've already gave an introduction, one of the female leaders in the sustainable cities area. We have Namira Hamid from Pakistan, leading the Women in Pakistan organization. And we have Katsumi Toyooka from Japan, one of the leaders of the Japan Community Power Association, also leading one of those community energy groups in Japan. And you're supported by Makoto Tajima, who is working with ISEP Japan, who will help with translation, interpretation. So I really like the way how, Christina, you started that first panel that we had. And may I just ask also a similar question to our 5 panelists. How did you get into the work that you're doing? Taryn, how did you get into renewable energy? How did you start this? I think you're muted. Still muted? Yes, I think you were now. No, at least I cannot hear you. Let me just try to ask. You look like you're unmuted.
You can also unmute yourself with your own button at the bottom left.
But Taryn looks unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Shall we give you a few more minutes and we continue? Then come back to you. Okay. Yeah, Taryn, anyway, I hope that we find a way. So then let's invite Janine O'Keefe, just with the first short statement. Janine, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi. I need to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, that sounds.
So this has been
good.
a fascinating listening the past 20 minutes or so. Sorry I didn't join earlier. I'm an electronic engineer, okay? I did engineering in the 1980s. And now I work with social engineering. Okay, how to build a movement, how to make people stand up. I'm actually not technically involved in the renewable industry anymore. My first work as an engineer, or early on in engineering, was with optical fibers and laying the network so that we could have the internet as it is today. And later on, I worked with mobile phones and the mobile, antennas and base stations and all the equipment associated with that. So I don't know that I've answered your question. I think the renewable industry, which I have been a part of sort of as a person, but not as an engineer directly, has been more, I think you naturally fall into it because renewable energy is, the basic concept is small and local. Like, for example, solar power in your home, or obviously there's a massive solar power industry which has solar power parks, and wind industry as well on the ocean. But still, many people, they come from their home and they look at what energy can I create for myself. Okay, so it's a natural thing to come to when it's local and small.
So was it that you had some experience that you then started working in the climate area as well, or was it a new kind of momentum that?
Yeah, I came into climate not through renewable energy, sorry. No, that wasn't where I came from. I came into climate because I'm Australian, and Australia has terrible democracy, with in particular with Murdoch owning more than 90% or 80% of the media. And I was looking for democracy. So actually I would see myself closer from the line of the South Australian women's vote in the 1890s, leading to suffragette work, which meant that unfortunately Australia has now been translated into a system where, even though it has a democracy, the media is so concentrated that democracy fails. And so from discussions and understanding democracy, I then moved into climate.
It's a very broad motivation. That's what we also heard from our previous speakers, actually.
Yes, I think your previous speakers I matched fairly closely because, and I think it's natural for, like, the climate movement is dominated by women. There's no way you could say it's not. Okay, even the younger girls, they're like more than, well and truly more than 60%, probably 80 or 90%. And then even the people, the older people involved, who probably struggled longer, they're also 60 to 80%. But we tend to stand back because we want a movement. So the person who picks up the mic tends to be male, unfortunately. So it is actually a reflection about how our society works and the suffragette process, actually, in my view.
Good. Now, shall we try Taryn again? I think as you just referred to Janine from Australia, you are now in Australia, while Janine, you're now living and working from Sweden. Taryn, sounds like we can hear you now.
Sounds like you can hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Hi everyone. Yeah, thank you for having me, and sorry about the error before. So how I came into it, I think I've got a very similar narrative as well, where for me it was really about community-led democratic participation, social justice. So I'm a community development practitioner, and I worked in many locations. I worked with Aboriginal, like Koori communities in Australia. I worked internationally in international development, and then came back to Australia and met the founders of what was to become the first community-owned wind farm in Australia. And, there were many issues at that time. There was a lot of, opposition to wind. There was a very kind of well-funded anti-wind farm sort of entity that was going around Australia and really, creating a lot of fear in communities. And, I was really interested in taking my skills in appropriate development into the context of renewables. But yeah, I'm certainly not an engineer, and my focus point has been more of a community development approach and democratic participation.
Thanks so much, Taryn. And I think we hear a bit more later from all of you, but let's just make this kind of introductory round. And I'd like to invite Mareike. Mareike, you are now working for the most important local governments network. You're originally from South Africa. How did you start all this work?
It's very interesting. I moved from government to working for an NGO in Germany the International Solar Energy Society, actually. So it was a lovely switch to see and to learn about renewable energy. And indeed, I think my mentors have been both men and women, and hats off to Monica, but also to many of the pioneers. Many of them were men in this space because at the time it was mostly engineering. But then when we brought in architecture, Anna-Greta Hessnes and others also were part of my mentors who introduced me to this space and made me excited about energy. Coming myself, I'm a political specialist. Basically, international politics is my daily work. But coming into this perception and now working with local and regional governments, where we're in a climate emergency, where we need the switch to clean, safe, secure energy, and renewable energy is the logical option from all perspectives, in my view. But what I still see in this political space that I work in, still very male dominated. Most of our political leaders, our mayors, our councillors, our presidents and ministers are mostly male. And it is, for me, one big question why women are not active in this space. And I think it is also because it's not a comfortable space, because it's a very aggressive space, a very competitive space. So we need to train women to be more able to speak up and to raise the level of discourse, I would say, and focus on inclusive solutions-oriented approaches. I would like to talk a little bit later more about what we're talking actually about is equality and the well-being of all people when we deal with climate change and the issues around it. It includes generating access to energy. Many poor communities have no energy and they are using fossil fuels or burning wood just to cook or whatever. There is tremendous possibility in the scope of unfolding community energy, looking at access to energy, looking at resilience in the energy systems, looking at climate protection. What is not the topic of the day, and which I think needs to be part of the conversation, is coming down to respect for people. If you want equality and well-being of all people, that includes women. And women have to be at the table to share their perspectives, their views, to be part of decision-making, to be part of the planning of this space. And that should be a requirement, not an option, in my view. More to talk about that later. Thanks, Stefan. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Mareike. Now I would like to move to our next speaker and to ask to introduce herself, also with such explaining us how did you get into this. Namira Hamid, you are from Pakistan. You also have some international background as you studied abroad. And you are the leader of Women in Energy Pakistan. Please let us know how you started this. Why did you start this? And what's your relation to the energy sector, renewable energy? Namira, very pleased to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I joined this a little earlier just to be able to hear the panelists from the previous one as well. And I'm so glad that I did that. Some familiar faces and friends in this movement that we're all in. So it was really nice to see this community being brought together by WWEA today. My personal journey into this issue or topic is that I studied public policy and energy from the United States. And we had a very sort of gender balanced, classroom. And that's what you expect when you join the workforce. I moved back to Pakistan, my home country, after my education. And the first job that I started was in the government, in the energy and policy making sector with the public government agency. And yeah, so many of what people have shared already, you being the only woman using that bathroom, female bathroom, or at the decision-making table, it's all men. And you would have females in the room, but they're on the sides, taking notes, and they're the interns, or they're the very generalist administrative positions. And that's not nice because it just makes it a very awkward and also a very non-inclusive experience. So there were a few other women in the sector working at the same time that I was, some in the private sector, some in academia, some as lawyers. And we got together around 3-4 years ago, and we said we need to do something about this. If we are in a position of privilege, then we definitely need to share that with others. So that's sort of the personal journey that led to creating our professional network for women in energy in Pakistan. Most of our members are working in renewable energy, in energy efficiency and conservation, in national regulators, and distribution companies. So it's a very interesting mix. And I'll be very happy to share more about this in the presentation later.
Thanks so much, Namira. Again, great to have you. Now, our fifth panelist is from Japan, Katsumi Toyooka. And I know that your connection, are you with us now? Katsumi Toyooka. I know that Makoto also, as I mentioned, tried to support.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here with Kazumi connected by smartphone.
Yes.
So
Okay.
she'll be on the podium in a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Japan. So let me just briefly welcome you. You are one of the board members of the Japan Community Power Network.
Yes.
But you're also leading one of those community energy enterprises in Japan. So we're very pleased to have you here because you're one of those leaders in Japan. So please, if you can let us know how you started this.
Okay. 田島さん、お願いします。大丈夫ですか？
はい、大丈夫ですよ。
大丈夫。はい。
大丈夫です。
では、自己紹介を、はい、いたします。
I'm going to introduce myself.
はい、豊岡和美と申します。
My name is Kazumi Toyoka.
はい、日本では2011年3月11日に東日本大震災があり、福島で原子力発電所が爆発しました。
Yeah, as you know, in Japan in 2011, there was a big earthquake, the Greatest Japan earthquake, which caused the Fukushima nuclear power plant meltdown.
それでたくさんの命が失われて、その上福島は今なお放射能に復興を妨げられています。
And then many lives were lost. Not only that, Fukushima rehabilitation is hindered by the still remaining radioactive in Fukushima, radiation in Fukushima.
はい、福島県は原子力発電所の立地という経済政策を自治の柱として受け入れてきたのですが、地方に暮らす私たちも基本的に何によって地域を作るのか問い直しに直面しました。
As a marginalized prefecture, Fukushima Prefecture could not help accepting a nuclear power plant in the first place as a pillar policy of regional development, which was demanded by national economic policy. But now we are reconsidering how we are facing fundamental questions, what kind of regional development policy we should choose.
はい、そこで仲間と共に再生可能エネルギーの団体を立ち上げて、地域による地域のためのエネルギーの検討を始めました。
Therefore, that was a big motivation that I established the renewable energy groups together with my friends and colleagues, and started thinking about how and also implement renewable energy project suitable to local setups.
はい、以上です。
That's it for now.
Thanks so much for this introduction. And I think it is, of course, very important. When we had this conference 4 years ago, the first World Community Power Conference, we learned a lot how people got into community energy because of the disaster that happened. We held that in Fukushima. And let me explain the voice in the background. Makoto, he was one of the organizers, also more in the background than visible. Makoto, it's nice to have you here as well on board. We've asked some of you also to present a short also introduction of what you do. And I'd like to ask now Taryn, I know you've been very active to present your work and how you do. Australia, I think we've already noticed, seems in the community energy sector a little bit different, because what you told us already is that you have a quite high share of women, and that is, of course, what we would like to learn from. How have you managed that? Taryn, again.
Great, I'm just waiting for my screen is black at the moment, so I've just shared my screen. I'm not sure what you're seeing. Is that coming through for all of you as the PowerPoint now?
Yes, just it's not the presentation mode yet, so we just see the whole PowerPoint.
Okay. Should start. How's that? Is that now working?
I think it's changing now. It's not.
Great. Is that visible for you now?
Looks like it's frozen. I don't know how others are seeing it.
I think we have the same issue yesterday with Zoom. It seems to be a Zoom problem. So just don't go to presentation mode. Just open the slides normal. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay, it's just coming out.
Yeah, that's something that suddenly has come up. I had that problem yesterday. Before it always worked, but you can just make the slide bigger. Maybe then we can still see it.
Yeah. How is that now for people? Is that working?
It's not changed here.
I will stop the sharing for you, and then you can share again. Try again a new.
Okay, sure. Sounds good. Okay, so I'll just try again now. Hopefully this will work.
Yes, and if you just make the notes smaller, this section, maybe we can see the slides bigger.
My screen's gone black again.
On the bottom, you can change the size of the slide.
I'm not sure what you're all seeing, but hopefully you can see the slides now. Is that working?
We can see, but
sorry,
it's not the full screen. It's if you can make the slide itself a bit bigger. Otherwise, I think we can see there must be a conference. So.
Okay. We might be having some low internet reception in the country. How's that now? Is that a full screen? I have a full screen on my screen.
Nothing's changed here.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, but I think it's okay if you just try.
Okay, hopefully, let me know if the slides don't change, because I'm worried that maybe the screen is frozen now. But anyway, hi everyone again. And this first image is a picture of our last National Community Energy Congress that was held in Melbourne, Australia, and we had about 700 people attend. And as you can see from the faces, there's a significant amount of women in the room, and certainly the majority was women in regards to attendance. And we also have on the board of the Coalition for Community Energy, it is 4 women and 1 male. So that's been quite common throughout the history of the Coalition for Community Energy, and it's also quite common across the community energy sector. So I'm just going to paint a little bit of a picture of what's happening in the Australian space. And that's certainly not to say that, you know, I haven't had my own struggles more broadly within the renewables sector. You know, it's not to say that I'm not frequently sort of the token female at many kind of presentations that occur. That does happen to me. And I also have the experience of many times taking people out to the wind farm who've never met me, who assume that my name must be a male's name, because it is quite androgynous and it is used for both men and women. So they're frequently quite surprised when they come to the wind farm and find that the manager, you know, of a decade is actually a young woman. Are you now seeing the map of Australia? Is that coming up? Has that screen changed? Goodness. How about now? Is that working?
No. I mean, still the first slide. I can see your
on
cursor
my screen.
moving.
Yeah, on my screen it's the second one. Is it still the first?
I still see the conference, yes.
Okay. Has that changed now?
No.
Okay, well, I might just have to move on. I think if it's not working, I'm sorry, everyone. On my screen, it is showing the second slides. I'm sorry, it's not working. The second visual, which is very small on your screen, is a map of Australia, and it outlines all of the community energy groups across the country, the national landscape. So we have around about 105 groups currently in Australia and 70 active projects, and a lot of those projects are in the small scale solar, so under 100 kilowatt scale. And it also is representative of what's happening in regards to the state-based renewable energy targets and emission reduction targets. So currently, on a federal level, we don't have agreement to reach zero net emissions formal agreement to reach zero net emissions by 2050, but all of the states have set that mandate, and a lot of them are in process to set emission reduction targets and have quite significant renewable energy targets as well. The third image, which you also can't see, is of our wind farm in Australia, so Hepburn Wind. And Hepburn Wind is an all-woman run wind farm, so we are 3 part-time female executives. We are a cooperative model, so it is that one member, one vote approach. We've been operating now for 90 years and we have over 2,000 members. We are a 4.1 megawatt wind farm, and we've just submitted a planning permit to add 7.44 megawatts of solar PV and also a 10 megawatt hour battery. So hopefully in the next year or two, we will see those new projects built. We also have a partnership program that's called Hepburn ZNet, which is our zero net emissions program by 2030. And that's really broadening out the scope of what we're doing in the community. So we are, actively working in the other sectors such as farming, waste, and transport. So doing things like electric vehicle bulk buys and EV charging infrastructure. Some of the common and emergent models that we're seeing across Australia are within the community energy sector are a lot of bulk buys. So it's very, very common, and it's a real easy win for a lot of communities to get them engaged, get them mobilised, to get momentum in the kinds of projects that they're working on. And it also works across that intersection with community energy groups, climate action networks, climate emergency groups, so they can all, find a place to kind of come together and collaborate. We're also seeing a lot of donation models, so solar and batteries on community facilities. These are typically quite small, under 30 kilowatts, and then small scale ownership and investment models under 100 kilowatts, and then more the mid-scale models. So this is, the Hepburn Wind model, and there's several others that are either wind or solar farms, either complete or in the pipeline. There's also community energy retailing occurring, large-scale community co-investment in commercial projects, mini grids, virtual power plants, and then this real movement of 100% renewable communities and zero carbon communities that's really gaining a lot of traction at the moment. We have a widely accepted principle in the community energy sector around open source. So in general, all IP that is developed is really openly shared. We have a knowledge hub with the Coalition for Community Energy where groups can upload their information, and we've seen that as a real shared principle really nationally. Everyone understands that they're under-resourced and that they need to share learnings widely, and that kind of ethic is very strong in the country. And also I guess the more collaborative governance models and cooperative models are also really thriving in the Australian context. I guess the community energy sector is unique in the renewable sector, as it seems to be in many other countries. Generally, in the renewable energy sector, there is an overrepresentation of men in the commercial sector. There's often a lot of scholarships and different programs and I guess sort of working groups to address that inequality and that tension. However, in the community power movement, the majority has historically been women to date. That dynamic hasn't been well researched in the Australian context, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to do more research in that space. Okay, I'm sorry that my slides didn't work, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. Maybe we can share the slides after the event on the conference website and the homepage. Yeah, thanks so much. I think Australia, that is really a quite inspiring example, because the government of Australia, as Janine already indicated, also it doesn't have maybe internationally a great reputation as renewable energy supporter, rather as seems to be a challenging situation. So to see your success, it's really excellent. Then let me now come to Janine. Janine, you're also Australian by birth, I understand, now living many, many years in Europe. And you have now started, I can say, this international for future movement. You've also prepared a small presentation that you want to share with us?
Yeah. Okay, wait a second. I need to take the screen down. Screen. Start broadcast. Right there. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it looks good.
Yep. Okay. I won't try and find the presentation mode. I don't know that I'll be able to do it. There's a lot of words here, but basically, first is to introduce myself. I'm an electronic engineer. I have an MBA. I studied engineering in Australia, and then did Master of Business, so basically economics, in Australia and Sweden. I worked as an engineer with Ericsson and came to Sweden. I also worked with for quite some time, NEC, so I worked in Japan as well. In any case, when Greta came on the 20th of August, 2018, I then heard about her within a week and went and videotaped her. And then gradually we built, well, she started what I would call this School Strike for Climate movement, which is very much associated with school students. And then there was a group which started Fridays for Future, which is actually, in some countries, actually classified as the School Strike for Climate movement. But in many countries, it is actually broad age. And the goal was to be broad age, because Greta clearly said, everybody's welcome, everybody's needed. And that is very true in climate. We need to be everybody as much as we can. One of the key things I have done in this movement, not the only thing, but one of the key things is to concentrate on what I call the social feedback loops. So look at how we grow the movement, okay? One of the key tricks, or one of the very early things which Greta did, which was brilliant, was that she did something which is regular, which had respect, it was easy to recognize, and created what I would call a religious style ritual, and had a lot of gratitude around that. I don't know if you know the TED Talk with the shirtless dancing guy. It's 3 minutes long. It's worth definitely watching twice. And it is about how to make something simple for everybody to follow you. So the second social feedback loop is actually the simplicity. So it's making simple steps so everybody can just join, but they need to join regularly and they need to join easily. And they need, so it's both simplicity, which is important, and on top of that, it needs to be easy to promote. So that's another social feedback loop. So they need to be able to see themselves and others to see them. So therefore the map is incredibly important to help people, everybody see each other. And that's the third social feedback loop, is to actually see that I'm one of those pins, okay? You know, even though there's 1,000 or actually 5,000 pins up there, I'm actually one of those. And if you press on the pin, you can actually get the person's email address. That has been another key social feedback loop, where people, a journalist would see a striker, you know, at the local school or at their town hall, and they'd come to their editor and say, I need to do an article about this. This is important. Many journalists at the grassroots level are actually very pro-climate, but the media industry is not. So the editor says, no, but that's just local. And so with the map, you can, within an hour or two, contact anything between 2 or half a dozen other strikers in different parts of the world, say from Korea, from South Africa, from the US, and then you can have an interview with 4 different strikers with a couple of hours work. And then you come back to your editor and say, but this strike is global. That's new. So you just broke through the glass ceiling of the media industry. And that is one of the things I think very, very key in both the school strike and the Fridays for Future movements. All right, the final thing which I want to bring up as a social feedback loop is the data feedback. All right, so one of the key things as an electronic engineer, one of the key roles I took on with other engineers was to do the web page, create the map, and create feedback of data. So could people not just see themselves on the map, they could see growth. They could see that there was more people coming on board. This is a picture from the web page with the statistics. And if you look carefully at the first, on the top one, you see the countries, okay, and that's gradually grown. You actually see it bumping slightly every time there's a major strike. So there's quarterly strikes, which are very large, and then there's weekly strikes, which have slow growth. Even then, when you look at the number of cities, they also grow and then bump up with the quarterly strikes. The number of events as well, and as well as the total number of strikers. So this is key for people to be able to then see, oh, well, you know, it's not just tapering off, okay? Clearly, COVID has been a challenge, don't get me wrong. It's not a trivial challenge, but still, I think we can all recognize that social media and the online work has also exploded. And each person can, via these techniques, see themselves as the one person contributing to the many. And that creates solidarity. And this, I believe, is a value which people who don't necessarily put their elbows out and push themselves forward need to have. So it sort of matches Tian's talk about Australia and the women being dominant in this industry, and the cooperative, the company is a cooperation where many people are working part-time but still seeing their value, and creating structures so that people can be both volunteers as well as work to create, to participate without having this requirement. I have to be full-time, 40 hours, and strict frames, which I don't necessarily believe fits everybody. And that I think is key in bringing women forward. I think I'll hand it back there.
Thanks so much. That's really an impressive story. I mean, we all know that the result that millions of people are now have joined that climate movement, and it's a great success. I think we in the renewables community are very grateful about this movement. Let me just underline that. But let me ask you one question now. You spoke at the end of your introduction about the role of women, but did you have that in mind when you started developing such a strategy, that how to specifically also involve women, and that did you expect that women would play such an important role in this movement?
The best way to put it is, before Greta started in 2018, I had no idea she was going to start. I had no idea it would be a young girl. I had no idea of anything. I had my wishes, okay? I had been looking for a strike. I am born in Melbourne, where and I studied at Victoria University and walked past the 888 sign, which is 8 hours play, 8 hours work, and 8 hours rest sign, which I think Melbourne was the first city in the world to have that frame for working. So striking has been a big part of my culture. The fact that it was a girl, the fact that what I would call movement process is dominated by women has been something which I have thought about a long, long time. And I'm an engineer, I'm a technical person. I'm actually not a socialist, or socialist is the wrong word, a sociologist. And so I think these questions are fascinating, but I'm not really skilled to answer, except to say from my experience it's really important to find ways to keep that inclusion and value that inclusion, find ways to show that inclusion and lift, like, for example, for a year and a half, I ran weekly meetings, Sunday night, 7 o'clock, for between an hour and 2 hours, with anybody in the world who wanted to talk about Fridays for Future. And a lot of it was young people, but it was definitely half not young. But I would try and give the moderator role away. I would try and share it around, because, I was running a meeting, I could do what I had that choice. I regularly chose a female girl, a young girl, because I thought, well, they need that experience. Maybe they don't get that because in the classroom, somebody nudges them out of the way with their elbows out. I'm not sure, but I do believe the competition doesn't necessarily encourage women to step up. Whereas I think community, gratitude, cooperation, part-time, and you can just have a try, often is a mentorship process which helps a lot. And as a female engineer, I can answer those questions relatively very well from your previous session about how you get put down all the time, and the only woman in the room all the time, and you have to get your elbows out, right? You have to be there with your elbows out. If you're not prepared to do that, you will just be trodden on the whole time. But you have to know some environments you need that, and some environments you don't. Like when I was at Telstra, one guy threw a chair in a meeting across the room, right? Not at me, but he did do it, okay? And that to me is such a violent act. I didn't want to be in the room. I didn't want to even be participating, And that, I think, is a natural process that we are either conditioned into, or because we're actually physically smaller, we naturally jump to. We go under the desk rather than stand up. And so the teaching women to stand up in the economic environment, which is very much an elbows out environment, is difficult.
Well, thanks so much. I understand it's not part of the kind of very analytical concept that you presented initially, but we have to go a bit deeper to understand what really makes that difference, and that we should certainly, and I think community energy offers such opportunities. Let me then go to Mareike. Mareike, you are also usually working in a rather male-dominated kind of all these international meetings still, although it's changing now. Now also after listening to Janine, would you like to also share your thoughts with us?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I think both Taryn's experience on the community energy project, I'd be very curious to hear more about that. And Janine's work, very informative. I think analyzing these things and giving tips and hints is extremely helpful. In the work that I'm doing, and I see, Stefan, you asked me to talk about the avant-garde space for climate protection as it relates to local governments. It's a bit of a challenging one because gender is essentially not yet embedded in the work of our local governments on a daily basis, I would say. What we're looking for is also giving more guidance and constructive hints and tips, and we'd welcome anybody who'd share anything that you already have that we can pull into our work. We'd be very pleased to share that because in principle, local governments are increasingly now tackling climate change. They understand the importance of doing so, but they don't have the full spectrum of tools available either. They also look to national governments to create that enabling space. So we have where there's a lot of wish and interest to do, but not necessarily all the capacity and capability to do so. But if we look at climate change and then considering gender considerations, there are limited gender considerations currently in planning, investment, and management in cities. That's the fact, I think. There's also, at the same time, the same also for limited engagement of marginalized communities, of the poor, of the vulnerable, all of the people who would really seriously be affected by climate change. So that is something we're addressing in our daily training, capacity building of local government, both the political leaders as well as the technical experts. And the aim is to just bring that perspective in. What would enable women to participate? How can your capacity building programs be adjusted to include women who might also have come again from different backgrounds? When we want to engage with the community, you need to talk to the bakers, the dentists, and everybody in between. You need to have that conversation also with the housewives or people who are looking for a job who cannot get one. So it's a very complex, diverse space. But if you don't focus actively on women's empowerment and make that part of your daily planning, that's not going to happen either. So this is also where we encourage our mayors and councillors to make sure that that's embedded in the work planning of the local governments. We've also seen that women typically face more difficulties when accessing urban services or participating in public or political life. And that again, you need to actively address. If you just leave it, it's not going to change by itself. So focusing urban planning, I think, is one space where we, again, a typically male-dominated space, is an area where we can definitely involve citizens, people who live in a city, in a district, make sure that they're part of the conversation. And again, listening to the different and unique needs of women, men, children, the elder, the disabled, and so on. The work we do is pretty much rolled out through our Green Climate Cities program. So that's our global climate impact program. And secondly, we have a very interesting space specifically looking at renewable energy through the 100% Renewables Cities and Regions Network. And in both these, the program and the network, we offer free guidance to our constituency, local and regional governments. The piece on gender equality, women empowerment needs to be upgraded and updated. I've seriously now listened to everybody speaking today, has given me some interesting insights onto what we could do there. But it's also to bring this topic more to the front and to the attention of those who can actually do something about it. What can we do about it? When you talk about access to energy for a community, when you talk about climate and energy action plans, we could incorporate gender considerations. When we're designing solutions which are context specific for a particular city or a town or a rural area, make sure that those solutions are gender sensitive and inclusive, and that they strive for gender parity. Typically, you're thinking of a technology to be implemented, but you're not thinking of what we could call these soft or social issues, which are just as important. I think the importance has been underestimated, that everybody always want to throw technology at a problem, but you need to also consider the social sciences when you're tackling climate change. We need to understand people's behavior, and this also implies then different categories of people. I think community energy projects are in that sense ideal, because it's a it's a local investment. It can create local jobs, local ownership on something that you use on a day-to-day basis, energy. So it's actually an interesting space, which I think has tremendous potential for future investment, to really bring that on board. One hopes that that crowdfunding and other financing mechanisms could really look into this gender space. What I do see, and that's quite interesting for me, is our own donors around the world are now also putting these requirements into the grants that they give us, so that it's not a side issue anymore. It is really embedded in our own daily work as well. I think investment for me is one area in the urban planning space. When we have to tackle climate change, we've learned from COVID-19 and the global pandemic that our systems are not very resilient and robust. And when I say systems, I'm talking about everything. Our systems, procedures, and infrastructure has also been highlighting weaknesses. So the space where many national governments are now putting money on the table for redesigning also urban spaces, I think we should use that as an opportunity to make sure that equality, respect for people, respect for the environment, and women's empowerment are part of those processes. This is a wonderful and unique opportunity, probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity we have, that we could really take in and benefit, and make sure we put this agenda squarely in the middle of that space. Thank you, Stefan, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Mareike. And I'm trying to understand, when listening to you, what the message that I get is that what we need is actually kind of cultural change, which means more inclusion, more respect, and less competition, which it seems anyway we need when we look at this huge transformation that we need to cope with climate change and the energy system, the transformation. Namira, from Pakistan, what are your thoughts about that? Would you agree? Namira, are you still with us?
Yes. Shall I take this opportunity to share my screen?
Please do so, yes. And feel free also to switch on your camera again.
Absolutely. I'll just wait for your signal that the presentation works, and then I will begin.
Looks good.
Excellent. Thank you. It's been so inspiring to hear everybody speak before me. So it's just as much of a pleasure to listen as to give this presentation and share more about the work that we do in Pakistan. So as you can see, the first picture is from one of our recent activities that was held earlier this year, before the pandemic and when the world was a little different. I am, as an introduction, Namira Hamid. I'm founder and chair of Women in Energy Professional Network in Pakistan. So just as a brief overview of what we do, we have a reach of around 5,000 female professionals and engineers working in the energy sector in Pakistan. We have a presence across all provinces of Pakistan and also all the major cities. 1/3 of our membership is in leadership positions. And that's really important for us. And I mention it here because that's what we aim to do. We want to double the number of female leaders in the energy sector in Pakistan in the next 5 years, and that's what we're working towards. We were formed officially in March 2018. Initially, our activities were very, low-hanging fruits, easy things, networking lunches or workshops. connecting mentors, senior and younger women. And in the next year, sort of our second year, we became ambitious. You know, we were growing in numbers. We had more women within our professional network volunteering their time in addition to their full-time jobs, because this is something that, you know, we really wanted to work on. So I'm going to share some of our ambitious projects that we worked on in renewable energy in the later slides. Since the beginning, it was also very important for us to have partnerships. And this is important because sometimes, and this is true in South Asia as well as in the sort of Europe and the US, most women networks are very informal. So in South Asia, there's a tendency to have WhatsApp groups. So, you know, get all the women together in a WhatsApp group and, you know, we're there for each other. But I mean, that's great. That's how it all starts. But we wanted to do something more than that. We wanted to have a network which was worthy of being listened to, which was pushing for policy change, which was pushing for an instrumental, shift in the way that the sector works in Pakistan. So our first partnership was with the government in Punjab, the largest province in Pakistan. And this sort of gave us the institutional support from the get-go. Some of our other partnerships are also with the World Bank. They have a South Asia Women in Power regional network. So this sort of gives us access to a South Asia-wide women networks who are working in a similar field to learn, you know, what works in India, what works in Bangladesh, what works in Nepal, and what are some of the things that might be useful for us in Pakistan. And also, we are in partnership with the Global Women's Network in the Energy Transition. I know Christine was moderating the previous session, and that's also been very useful for us to learn what works in Europe, for example. Our 5 pillars of the stream of work where we, have our activities, if we had to, summarize it, we do work first in STEM education, because that's where the real change needs to start. So we have our chapter in local universities in Pakistan, so that more women at student levels can start to join and learn more about what are some of the careers and job opportunities that they will have in the sector. Our second pillar is recruitment. So we need to have more women in the sector. And that's a very important place to begin the work as well. Then the third is development. Because once you get women in the sector, every year more are dropping out. And we have a pyramid that we see all across the world. Every next level of career progression, there are fewer and fewer women. And what are the reasons? There are so many reports and studies out there. For the last 10 to 15 years, a lot of donor agencies and development partners are churning out the same reports, and the reasons are also the same. It's just that we need to work on them harder. The fourth pillar is retention. So once you're developing, their careers, you're putting in more training, you're putting in more mentorship and networking for them, then you're also trying to retain them and their talent within the sector. And then the last and probably my most favorite pillar is policy. So it's good to work on all of these 4 pillars, but it's really the structural sort of policy changes that you need in the sector to bring real change. So one of our absolute favorite activities, and I'll only show you a couple of them, 2 or 3 of them. One of our favorite ones is female solar training. This idea was initially suggested and produced by one of our favorite female engineers in Pakistan by the name of Rehana Aziz. She designed the first sort of training. So we partnered with her and a local solar company by the name of Shams Power to provide solar training for female engineers. Again, some of them were students, some of them were recent graduates, some of them were young professionals already working, but all of them had the same story, that no matter at which stage that they were at, they were given fewer opportunities in the sector in comparison to their male counterparts. So as an additional sort of skill set that they could have is a certification from our organization in partnership with a solar company that led them through 4 days of hands-on training of how to do solar PV installation. It was, again, as I said, it was 4 days of hands-on training. 2 days were classroom-based learning, And then 2 days were on site. And this is sort of one of my favorite pictures, which sort of shows our graduates working on solar PV. How do we measure success when we're doing these trainings? So one of our key sort of, what sort of makes us happy about our work is that the CEO of the sponsor companies took special note to recruit more female engineers in his company. And that then sort of became into a bigger success in that the company realized that they didn't have an inclusive gender policy in their company. And they reached out to us to work with them on producing industry standards for what an inclusive HR policy for a company, a solar company in Pakistan could look like. And we're working with them on making not just this company implement this policy, but also making a blueprint and industry standard for other companies in Pakistan to adopt similar inclusive, especially gender-related inclusive policies in their companies. The success is also measured that 1/3 of our trainees were offered jobs within 1 month of graduating. We wish it was all the trainees, but 1/3 is also a really good success measure in that this skill helps women be recruited more and be retained more in the sector. Our second sort of favorite, sort of activity that we're doing is also taking the conversation of women inclusion outside of echo chambers. So all of us on this webinar agree with each other that we need more women and we need the energy sector to be more inclusive. But what about all the others who are not a part of this conversation right now? And that's what we're working on. We want to take this conversation to public places. So for example, last year, one of the conferences that WWEA in Pakistan hosted in September 2019, we were able to host a dedicated Women in Energy panel. And the women on the panel, as you see, they are Managing Director of a Punjab Power Development Board. They are CEOs of local companies. They are leaders in their organizations. And you also see a male on the panel because we need male champions to champion on our behalf. So the whole sort of he for she movement or having male champions is absolute key. Another thing which is very important is creating partnerships. So I already mentioned our partnership with the World Bank, but this is all to sort of to reinforce the idea that it's only through partnership that you're able to think bigger and be more ambitious in what you can offer. Just to add more, and I did this very quickly, is that, well, after I was listening to Janine and a few of the others, is that it's very interesting how climate movements across the world are heavily female-led, and sort of it's a lot. You would see more women working in climate activism at local levels than men. And so one of the examples in Pakistan is also the Climate Action Now network. They're both males and females, but a lot of the work that they're doing on protests on the roads and holding marches and really holding the government accountable on climate action. And for example, on, as you see in the picture, on smog and air quality, it's women, young women that you see leading that conversation, and that's been very interesting for us as well. The last thing that I want to add is our most ambitious activity so far is actually going to be held tomorrow. I'm so glad that the WWEA is a part of it. And I mention this only because this is so relevant to get women in the renewable energy and clean tech and climate sector. What happened, this quick story for this activity, as I wrap up, is that over the summer in June, especially, a lot of students graduate from universities. They move back to Pakistan, or they're graduating from local universities, and COVID pandemic, had hit, and there was a lot of confusion, a lot of worry, what is going to happen to their career progression? Are there even any job opportunities out there? And they were asking us to connect them to employers. And when we spoke to employers, especially solar companies in Pakistan, they would say, oh, we're still recruiting, So clearly there was just so much chaos and confusion in the market, and we wanted to do something about it. So we partnered up with amazing women-led communities, women engineers, women in tech, WePower, and with all sort of combined together, all of us are hosting the largest digital job fair in Pakistan, scheduled for tomorrow, Friday and Saturday. And the idea is honestly to get more women in the sector. It's open to both males and females, but our sort of not so hidden agenda is to get women to avail this job fair and enter, be able to access job opportunities that some of these companies would have. So we have 1,300 plus candidates registered already. We have 60 plus companies exhibiting with us. We have more than 9 and 10 panel sessions dedicated on specific topics. One is actually renewable energy. What are some of the opportunities available in Pakistan, and what are some of the critical skills that young graduates require? And one other panel, which is very relevant to this conversation today, is also, Pakistan's clean energy transition. How do we prepare our workforce towards growing green? We're listening from the High Commissioner of Canada to Pakistan for this. We're listening to people working as climate change advisors, locally as well as internationally. And we really hope that, any effort that we're putting towards this leads to more women inclusion in the sector, because that's the least that we can do in sharing the privilege that some of us have had in the positions that we are in. So I will end with that and give the stage back to Stefan.
Thanks so much, Namira. I think this is a very impressive and a great example of how you are building a community succeed, and then hopefully also achieve the change that we urgently need. We're a little bit behind time. That's why I would like to directly go to our final speaker of this panel, Katsumi. Again, you've already introduced yourself from Japan, and I'd like to ask you to say a few more words about how you are approaching this aspect and how you have managed to have a much higher share of women than probably in the conventional power sector in Japan.
あなたがですね、どのようにして、日本の再エネ分野において女性の比率を上げるかということをしているかについてちょっと話していただきたいと思います。
パワーポイントお願いします。
はい、
そうですね、私は地域による地域のエネルギーということをコーディネートしてプラットフォームを作るような事業をしています。
I'm coordinating a renewable energy development project for the people and for the local community, by the local community.
はい。そしてですね、さらにこういう、私たちのような活動をしている団体が日本中にあって、それが、ご当地エネルギーという団体を作っています。
There are many organizations like us, mostly non-profit organizations throughout Japan, and that forms our Japan Community Power Association.
で、そのご当地エネルギーは女性の比率が非常に多くて、半分以上を女性が占めています。
In that, the Japan Community Power Association, the proportion of female is very big. More than half of the members are.
日本の危機に対してですね、命の危機、災害の危機に対して非常に敏感であることが大きな原因だと思っています。
I think this is because females more sensitive or reactive to the climate change, threat of climate change, and also very concerned with the creating safe and secure environment in their local community.
そしてたくさんの事業をしているわけですが、決して簡単ではございませんでした。
Yes, we've been conducting so many projects, but it is a series of the hurdles and the challenges and that we have to overcome.
はい、社会はですね、再生可能エネルギーに対するニーズがすごく高い。そして原子力発電に対する危機感は非常にあるにもかかわらず、政府は全く動かず、はい、変えることがなかなか難しい状況に遅れている状況は日本社会にとって大きな問題です。
The needs of the renewable energy, the changing the fossil energy to renewable energy is so big, but the government is not that responsible in Japan.
それはですね、日本の風土が男性社会であること、そして先進国とかは言えないようなですね、男性優位社会ですね、がある、依然としてあるということです。
I think this is probably because Japan is still man-dominated society, and I don't call Japan as a developed country in that sense.
日本男性の特徴として、社会を支配したい、権力を持ちたい、それを手放したくない、それとですね、過去の失敗を認めたくない、そして批判を嫌うということがあると思います。
The typical man's mentality, Japanese mentality is they want to dominate the scene or anything, and also they hate to be criticized, or they are reluctant to accept some others' opinions or advice.
はい。そしてですね、一方女性はですね、日本の女性は非常にシャイでですね、表に出たくない、そして波風を立てたくない、自分の意見を大きな声で言わないというような特徴があります。
The Japanese women, on the other hand, has a very gentle and inward-looking characters. They tend to step back or behind the man and not to say anything bold, and then they are not aggressive at all.
けれどもですね、この私たちのエネルギーに対するこの団体の女性の進出が進んだのは、はい、危機感がもうそれを超えて、変わり始めたということだと思います。
But because of, I think this is started changing beginning from our own organization, where the proportion of females increasing, because the female and the people are now
ですね、私たちはプラットフォームを作ることで、たくさんの企業、自治体、NPO、大学、金融機関、そしてですね、漁業者、農業者を巻き込むことに成功しました。
By creating a platform, we are successfully involving various sectors and group of people, non-profit organizations, corporate enterprises, local government, and also fishermen and the farmers.
それはなぜかというと、失敗とかあと批判をするのではなくて、成功のイメージをですね、丁寧にイメージさせる、そしてリスクを消していきながら事業を作るということを心がけてきたからだと思っています。
I think the secret of a success is to imagine to have an image of the success, and not to worry about taking risk.
ですね、太陽光発電なんかも、これができることによる利益を受け取るメリットをですね、分かりやすくシンプルに説明する。一方、リスクはないことをきちっと示す。そしてですね、たくさんの方々がその利益を受け取れるようにするということに気を配っています。
We are focusing on providing a very simple and very simple explanations to the lay people. We are explaining that there's not much risk doing this, and also we try to evenly distribute the profits and the benefits among those people.
これをですね、この時に成功の秘訣は、女性の方がですね、コミュニケーション能力が高いことが成功したと思っています。男性はですね、1日に7000語しか喋りませんが、女性はですね、平均で2万語喋るっていうようなことも言われています。はい、コミュニケーション能力に対するポテンシャルの高さがですね、非常に役に立ったと思っています。
I think the better communication capability of the female contributed to this success. One say the man speaks 700 words as compared to the women speak 20,000 words per day.
それとですね、もう一つ女性の特徴として、この写真にもあるように、複数のことを同時に考えられるということがあると思います。はい、男性はですね、一つのことに夢中になってしまうというような傾向があるのではないでしょうか。
And this is another thinking of mine. The success also depends on the female's ability, multitasking ability. Also, female can think about many things at the same time, whereas the man tend to focus on just one thing, and so their concentration is very good, but they are lacking. They are far behind of female in multitasking ability.
はい、そのおかげでですね、たくさんのエネルギー、たくさんの団体や人のソースですね、そういうものにコミュニケートできたり、また農家だったり、食だったり、はい、そういうものにも一緒にアプローチができて、同時に事業をやるというようなことができるようになりました。
With this high communication capability, we can now reach out the many stakeholders and also local people while conducting a project at the same time.
はい、お金のことを考えながら、食べ物のことを考えながら、子育てのことを考えながら、社会のことを考えるということが同時にできるからです。
We female can think about money, children, and society and politics at the same time.
はい、そしてそれをですね、さらにご当地エネルギーでは女同士でたくさん共有しながら広げていくという手法でですね、日本中にエネルギーを広げております。
Through this network, Japan Community Power Association, we share that experience, particularly within a female group, and try to expand it to the entire country.
はい、それを非常に親切な男性方がサポートしてくれているという恵まれた状況にあると思っています。
And we are very fortunate that we have a very kind gentleman in our association which support our activities.
ですね、悪い面を言うとキリがないんですが、はい、そういうふうにですね、いい面を示しながら進んで事例がですね、語っていくというような方向でですね、我々は事業を広げていっております。
I didn't talk about or touch upon any negative aspect or any negative things today because I don't have enough time for that. But also, I think it is very important to disseminate or to share the successful cases.
なので今非常に広がりつつあってですね、政府もやっと気候危機宣言を発しましたし、我々もこれからもっともっと大きな事業にチャレンジしていくチャンスが来ている。規制改革も進むというふうに信じております。
There are many obstacles ahead, but the Japanese government recently announced the zero carbon society by 2050. And so I think our society is gradually changing too. So we keeping that hope to challenge new projects in the endeavors.
こういう手法でですね、広げていけば、もっともっと再生可能エネルギーを 100% にしていくということもですね、アプローチが可能だと信じています。その楽観的なですね、思考がいい結果を生むのではないかと思っているんですが、はい、楽観的に捉えております。はい、以上です。
I'm quite optimistic that we can achieve renewable energy 100% society with this kind of optimism attitude. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much for giving us your insights from Japan. And it's very encouraging to see, of course, the success that you have. And at the same time, I think you're touching something that we heard also from our previous speakers, that it has a lot to do with culture. I like very much the title, Energy for Happiness. Now we are a bit behind time, of course, and I would like to encourage now our audience, if you have any questions, if you want to raise anything, please raise your hand. Otherwise, let me start asking a question now to Janine, as you're the only panelist who is not at the moment actively in the energy sector. What are your thoughts now after listening to those different people? They're all in community energy, and you hear about the challenges and how they've succeeded. Would you have any advice for them, or what are your comments?
Well, as an electronic engineer, I wasn't an electrical engineer, electronics, so I was doing the micro rather than the macro electrical side. I would say that the elbow pushing and the hierarchy and the process where one person gets a microphone, which is very common in politics. It's also mimicked in the media industry. This process is really something which most people dislike of either gender, but some people are more successful at it than others. And your work is sowing the seeds properly and more thoroughly into our communities. And those seeds are of everybody being welcome, really. So I'm doing now the more social side, and you're doing the actual more technical in IT, we talk about the user interface and the actual technical side. So you're actually sowing the seeds from a technical side, whereas I'm sowing the seeds from a social side. And both of them are working together. And I really appreciate the work you're doing, because you're showing that this individual involvement and bringing the people into the community and making them active this way is actually going to help democracy and is going to help action on the streets and give people strength in that way, as well as my work should help your work. So that's brilliant to hear.
Thanks so much for this comment. Does anyone else wish to say? Oh, there is Judith Streletsky. You would like to raise your hand, but you can't find the button. So Judith, if you just unmute yourself and please speak. Just briefly introduce yourself, please.
Yes, my name is Judith Soletsky, and I'm a Hungarian living in Denmark. And I'm an engineer, and I also have an MBA, like someone like Janine. And I experience many of the things what you mentioned here. And I have 2 daughters, so not like Stefan, who has 2 sons. And these questions what you raised, and it was incredibly interesting for me. And I having these questions for many, many years. Why women do not enter the space, as it was mentioned. And why is it that I, as an engineer, I also experience the same majority of men. I was one of the few, and so on. And why is it that even though they are women in a movement, they don't stand up? So this question about, for example, the Fridays of Future, it's full of women. Why are they the women? And why is it that even though in Denmark, when they want to present themselves, there comes a boy who presents them, not the girls, even though 80% of the people are women? And why are the women, and why is it that they are still, when you want to have respect or influence, you stand up with a man? I'm working with the International Network for Sustainable Energy. When we are working with the organizations from Africa, Asia, even though there are women at the organizations, when they want to present their work at the UN or different other places, and they only have money for one person. So the man is who is coming to the meeting at the different forums. So I see 2 main reasons. One of them is the role model. So I became engineer because my mother was a technical drawer, and maybe the Fridays of Futures has the role model of Greta. Maybe that could be the reason. And then the other thing is that when women stand up, they need a cause. So why, for example, the anti-nuclear movement, there were a lot of women after Chernobyl, the Mama 86 in Ukraine and so on. So I think women and also all children wants to fit into the system. And then that is why they don't stand up. And then it could be that climate that this Fridays of Future movement managed that they understand the cause and then understand that they can fight. And but it's still not totally the reasons. So I would like that. It's a wonderful presentations you give until now, and I don't know if you can elaborate a little bit more on this. Also, Marika was mentioned the same problem that you would like maybe to more elaborate on this, that about the women standing up and taking the leading role model, the problems with that. And how can we change? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Judith. Does anyone, or would you like anyone to directly respond to that? Or does anyone would like to respond directly?
I'm happy to respond. I mean, I think there are many reasons why women don't stand up. I think part of it I mean, that's one reason why I don't go into politics. Is it's dirty fighting. I mean, it's aggressive, and the concept of democracy and having rational conversations and finding a good solution for everybody seems to be not part of our current democratic space, which I find is really sad. That's my personal opinion. That's not the opinion of my organization. I think we need to instill proper democratic qualities in people, and the young people at school need to be trained in a different way. They need to be trained to be creative, to express themselves, to learn to speak in front of gatherings. None of that training is standard in many spaces. I also think we need to build on building respect for people. I think when I look at my own country, there is no respect. That is a space that has evaporated, shockingly so, that life has no meaning. And I think our political leaders need to start bringing in quotas. We need to bring quotas for women, because without the quotas, in my view, we're not going to get anywhere. And the women who say quotas are not needed are the women who are confident enough to think they're getting into that space. Those women should support the quota system, in my view. Again, you need the different perspectives of men and women in all conversations. If you can have true gender equity, 50-50 on panels, 50-50 in governments, you would have a completely different conversation. And quite an instructive space, and I think a collaborative space, because women do focus on solutions and collaboration. That's maybe how we can change politics. But yeah, over to you, Stefan.
Thanks so much, Mareike. Anybody else would like to comment on that? I think we should now soon close or come to the conclusion of this session, as we're now quite run out of time. But I think this has been a very inspiring session again. So maybe each of you a final kind of word. I start with Taryn again, the order in which we had the presentations. Taryn, your final thoughts about how we can mobilize the whole society by strengthening the role of women in community energy and climate change?
Yeah, I really liked a lot of the comments from this session and the session before, because I did get to see the session before. And, you know, I think valuing women's role and their voice and hearing their voice is always, you know, really, really key. And I liked, was it Dorte talking about, you know, seeing women as the translators, you know, particularly in the community energy space, between the sort of more technical and the more social and the kind of environmental good. I think they play a, you know, broadly, we play a good role in that. I think it's very exciting what's happening with the young movement. So yeah, thank you, Janine, for your in the background work with that. It's yeah, we need the young people to feel hope as well. That's all I've got. It is very late in Australia, so I will say good night to everyone now. Thank you for having me.
Anyway, thanks so much. I know that it's for you, it's quite late indeed. Thanks for staying with us so late. Janine, your kind of conclusion summary of what you heard.
Yeah, I think we need to research this more. My mic is on, yeah. Because even in the climate movement, I see young and older women step up, as in at least get out there. They are dominant. Yet the microphone lands, as the lady from Denmark said, in the hands of a man. And often I actually see, not uncommonly, it's actually almost often, I see a middle class, middle-aged male decide who gets a microphone. And it's sort of like, how did that happen? What's he doing there? You know, he's hardly even coming at the right time. You know what I mean? He's hardly, you know, and there's this base assumption that they know better or something. And so the journalist gives the microphone to the male thinking that they know, right? And then he gets to decide. Sometimes it's just random, but sometimes it's actually structural. And I see it in the NGOs. Many NGOs who come in and support a Fridays for Future activity will often be, so they're paid, their time there is paid, and it'll be middle class, middle-aged male who's there deciding over what's going on, because they happen to be, it's obviously from an activist on the floor, on the street, to a person who's actually paid in Greenpeace or in 350, that's obviously a step up. So everybody's looking at them going, oh, I have to be kind to them because I might be able to get a job with them, right? So it's, the whole process is structural in many ways, as well as random. And we need to think about this, and we need to, I work on systems theory. If there's one thing I do actually have common with the electronics, and now it's about looking at the system, and that's why social feedback loops is a systems theory process, and how to make that work so that all genders, or even if we jump over and say that there is no gender, everybody is just individual, and try to, but how to make sure many voices are heard. And it classically, it's not just a global South compared to North issue. It's also what I call small towns relative to big cities who are actually nearer the power. So the actual power structures in our society are quite large, and we need to understand and look at that and work and create. This is where I would agree with the previous talker about quotas. I think we do need quotas because we need to understand how those quotas affect. And this is where Citizens Assembly from XR is a very good, with Sortium, which is automatically using quotas as their base, is a good step.
Thanks so much, Janine. Then I'd like to ask Mareike your concluding remarks.
I think I've pretty much said it all. I would just say we need to support each other. I like the women supporting women space. I think we need to also share much more amongst each other what works well. If we can get a better understanding, not only of the psychological space, but also of the structural spaces. From our side, from ICLEI side, we are working with local and regional governments, helping them understand that this is an important topic and that they need to embed it in their climate and energy work, being inclusive, ensuring equity. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you so much. Now, Namira sent me a personal message that she had to leave already, like 10 minutes ago or so. Then I would like to ask Katsumi for the very final remarks of this session.
はい。はい。心理学で幸福優位という考え方があります。
幸福の何？
幸福優位、優位性。
優位性？In psychology, science of psychology, there is a concept, 幸福の何？優位性？幸福優位。成功するから幸せになるんじゃなくて。Sorry, I don't know this term. 成功するから幸福になるんではなくて、幸福だから成功するという考え方です。聞こえないんですけど、ズームの方で。ズームの方で？マイク聞こえない？幸福優位性ってわかります？マイクがオンになってないじゃん。なってる。電池が切れた。
幸福優位性って、もう電池がないんですよね、これ。充電が。成功するから、幸福になるんではなくて、幸福だから成功するという言葉があります。
Okay, Stefan, I don't understand what she's saying, but she says there is a concept in psychology, the superiority of the happiness.
なのでね、バイオ、再生可能エネルギーも、
It is not,
面白い、はい、面白い事業に
仕上げること、ハピネスな事業に仕上げると成功する。で、成功するところに人が寄ってくるというような成功優位性を持ち込むことが成功の秘訣だと思います。
People started to gather to the success case to be happy. That's what she said. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think happiness, that's what we all want and aim at. That's kind of the motivation. Sorry. Would you like to add anything?
何かshe ran out the battery for the mic. So
okay.
She cannot talk any longer. Yeah.
Anyway, I think if happiness, that's what we all want, and we have to see how we have to change, all of us, our societies, the way we do run the world at the moment. If that's kind of the conclusion, at the very final conclusion of this session, I think it's an excellent one. I would like to say a very, very big thank you to all of you, also for staying with us longer than we expected. I think it was an excellent panel here. Thanks a lot to everyone. Makoto, also for your translation interpretation services. Thank you to Taryn, thank you to Shanine, thank you Mareike, also Katsumi and Namira, who's already left. To everyone who stays in the audience, let me mention that we will prepare the recordings. It's now already streamed on YouTube, but they will be made available later. So you can, if you want to watch the discussion again, you can do that. I think it will take a day or two on our YouTube channel. Thanks so much. We will now have a break. This morning, of course, was focusing more on the Eastern Hemisphere. In the afternoon, we have 2 more sessions with speakers from also from the Americas. So we start again in now a little bit more than 1 hour. Still enough time to have a break, and I hope to see some of you, hopefully many of you, again in the afternoon. Thanks so much. Have a great day otherwise, and I hope that together we will make that happen, that the world becomes a happier place with a more gender balance between us, male and female. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.